Chapter 11:20. Shao Qing and Bai Ruyue had both gone to rest. Seeing this, Chun Ling asked softly, "Third brother, what do you plan to do? Do you need my help?" They had always known about this, but Chun Ling and Long Qing's status made it difficult for them to interfere in this matter. First of all, one of them was the holy son of the soaring Cloud Temple, while the other was the holy daughter of the 10,000 Dragon Temple. They had nothing to do with the Wuchen Temple. In addition, the 10 great temples of the Sacred Palace were completely independent of each other, so the elders of the Wuchen Temple would not listen to their orders. In addition, although Chun Ling and Long Qing addressed Shao Qing and Bai Ruyue as their parents, they had nothing to do with the Shao clan, so it was not appropriate for them to interfere in the Shao clan's matters. Therefore, as Chun Ling said, it was best for Shao Chun to personally deal with the Shao clan. Shao Chun did not answer Chun Ling's words. Instead, he turned his head to look at Enlan and Lu Zhu, who were nearby, and asked, "Have there been many young masters and holy sons wooing the two of you recently?" Shao Chun had already forcefully suppressed his anger, so when he asked this question, Shao Chun's tone was still relatively calm. Hearing this, the two girls did not hide anything and replied truthfully, "There have been many, but young master, we have not agreed to them and have never gone out with them. It's just that they have been pestering us, so we have no choice." Perhaps they were afraid that Shao Chun would misunderstand, so the two girls specially explained it. Regarding this, Shao Chun naturally would not blame the two girls and only said in a deep voice, "If you meet these people in the future, directly beat them up. No matter who they are, no matter what their status is, if you can't beat them, let Shui, Ro, and the others do it. Directly beat them up." Hearing this, Enlan and Lu Zhu were overjoyed and immediately nodded in agreement. Actually, they had long wanted to violently beat up those young masters. All day long, they were like flies circling around them, annoying them to death. Now that they had Shao Chen's order, they could attack without any scruples. In these past few years, Enlan, Lu Zhu, and the others had been by Shao Chen's side, so their cultivations had naturally risen along with him. All of them had already attained the initial stage of the Dao transformation realm, so it wasn't a problem for them to bash up those young masters of the great clans. Moreover, didn't Shao Chun say that if they couldn't defeat them, they could ask Qin Shuru and the others to make a move? In truth, the 6 women had never thought of getting married. They only had one wish in their lives, and that was to stay by Shao Chen's side and take care of Shao Chen's life. Even if it was only as a maid, it didn't matter. They knew that they weren't good enough for Shao Chun, so the 6 women were very clear about their positions. But even if they were just maids, the 6 women's hearts couldn't possibly hold another man. After instructing the 2 women, Shao Chun turned to look at Bai Ruyue and Shao Qing's room. At this time, the lights had already been extinguished, and the 2 elders had clearly fallen asleep. Soon, Qin Shuru and the others returned. Perhaps they could tell that Shao Chun wasn't in a good mood, so the women obediently kept quiet. Only 100 Flower Fairies said softly, "Mother and the others have already fallen asleep. Don't worry." Hearing this, Shao Chun nodded slightly, then looked at 100 Flower Fairy and the others and said, "Spend more time with Mother these few days. In addition, during this period of time, no one is allowed to see Mother and Father, especially the people from the Shao clan. No matter who comes, stop them. Tomorrow, I will send people to guard them." Not allowing Bai Ruyue and Shao Qing to see outsiders, especially the people from a Shao clan. Hearing this, everyone clearly knew what Shao Chun wanted to do. Obviously, he wanted to make a move on the restless people in the Shao clan. In order to prevent these people from pleading in front of his parents, Shao Chun simply didn't allow them to see each other. Just now, Shao Chun had promised Shao Qing that he would be merciful, but this was only for those who could be forgiven. To put it bluntly, Shao Chun had only promised Shao Qing to appease his father. As for Shao Chun himself, he still had to do what he had to do. This time, the Shao clan had indeed made Shao Chun a little angry. Hearing Shao Chun's words, the women nodded solemnly. Then the group left the small courtyard, leaving behind Enlan and Lu to take care of the 2 elders. Chun Ling and Long Qing bid farewell and returned to their respective temples. After settling Tian Yu down, Xiao Chun returned to his residence and silently rested for the night. Early the next morning, Xiao Chun summoned all the elders of the Wuchen Temple to the main hall of the Wuchen Temple. At the peak of the Wuchen Peak, there was a pure white and ethereal hall. Xiao Chun sat in the main seat, and below him, nearly 100 half-saint elders of the Wuchen Temple stood respectfully on both sides. They didn't know why Xiao Chun had suddenly summoned everyone, but seeing that Xiao Chen's expression didn't seem too good, all the elders cautiously stood where they were. Tapping his fingers lightly on the armrest, Xiao Chun was silent for a long time before he slowly opened his mouth and spoke. I heard that a lot of new disciples have come to the Wuchen Temple recently. How is it? Aren't these people very strong and talented? They actually allowed my Wuchen Temple to recruit over 100 new disciples in just a few months. Moreover, they weren't selected from the in-name disciples, but from the outside world. It seems that my Wuchen Temple is really attractive. Following Xiao Chen's words, the expressions of the elders below turned serious, and some of them couldn't help but turn pale. Xiao Chun took in the changes in everyone's expressions, especially the elders whose faces were as pale as paper. He paid special attention to them. There was no need to think about it. These people were definitely the ones who handled it. Those children of large clans who were forcibly inserted were probably approved by them. Xiao Chun locked his gaze on the elders. After waiting for a few moments, he continued. Why? Don't you have anything to say to me? Since Xiao Chun had already said so, the elders present were no fools. Immediately, the pale-faced elders stepped forward and knelt before Xiao Chun, respectfully saying, Thank you for your kindness. Holy Son, we have sinned. Xiao Chun definitely knew the whole story, which was why the elders didn't dare to hide the truth and immediately told Xiao Chun the truth. Holy Son, please understand. We only accepted these people because we were worried about the Xiao clan, the few of them explained. Upon hearing their explanation, Xiao Chun naturally knew that they did it because of the Xiao family. But so what? After hearing their words, Xiao Chun immediately snarled. This is the sacred palace, the Wuchen Temple. What does it have to do with the Xiao family? You are the elders of my Wuchen Temple, not the elders of the Xiao family. What are you afraid of? Could it be that you treat my Wuchen Temple as a garbage dump? Indeed, he was furious. Upon seeing Xiao Chen's furious roar, the elders below instantly knelt on the ground. Please add, please vote, please recommend. In a chapter. Chapter 1121. Xiao Chun was usually a very easygoing person and had never lost his temper in the Wuchen Sacred Hall. This was the first time the elders had seen Xiao Chun in a rage. The cold air in the hall was oppressive. Naturally, the cold air came from Xiao Chun. After shouting angrily, he looked at the elders who were kneeling respectfully on the ground. Only then did the anger in his heart gradually dissipate. He knew that these elders were only afraid of the Xiao clan and that they hadn't done anything wrong, but Xiao Chun was still angry. As elders of the sacred palace, why did they have to care about the Xiao clan's feelings? As Xiao Chun had said, this was the sacred palace, the Wuchen Sacred Hall, and it had nothing to do with the Xiao clan. After taking a deep breath, Xiao Chun said in a deep voice, All right, get up. Half of the elders of the Wuchen Sacred Hall were old acquaintances with Xiao Chun. Even if they didn't know each other, they had seen each other before. Now that they were all kneeling respectfully in front of him, Xiao Chun didn't feel good. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, the elders stood up, but they still kept their heads down and didn't dare to look directly at Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun said angrily, Why are you all lowering your heads? As elders of the Wuchen Sacred Hall, all of you are like frosted eggplants. Do you only know how to keep quiet when something happens? Now that something has happened, it's time to think of a solution, not silence. With that, Xiao Chun asked the elders to raise their heads. Then, Xiao Chun continued, Tell me, how many disciples do we have in the Wuchen Sacred Hall? How many came in through connections, and how many came in through the Xiao clan's connections? To be honest, Xiao Chun only had a general understanding of the situation in the Wuchen Sacred Hall. It couldn't be helped. Xiao Chun didn't spend much time in the sacred palace and basically left all the matters of the Wuchen's sacred hall to the elders present. To put it bluntly, Xiao Chun was a hands-off boss. In response to Xiao Chen's question, an elder on the left side of Xiao Chun quickly stepped forward. He was the grand elder of the Wuchen's sacred hall and was a half-step saint. His name was Chen Mo, and he was personally promoted by Xiao Chun. Chen Mo stepped forward and bowed to Xiao Chun before saying, "Successor, there are a total of 12,000 disciples in the Wuchen Sacred Hall. Among them, 10,000 are core disciples, 1780 are core disciples, 200 are personal disciples, and 10 are prospective successors. There are 584 disciples who didn't take the test, and 210 of them are related to the Xiao clan." Hearing Chen Mo's reply, the anger in Xiao Chen's heart burned even more. Just the number of people who were related to the Xiao family had reached 210. It seemed that Chun Ling's estimate of more than 100 people last night was still too low. More than 500 people didn't pass the test. Good, very good. It seems that my Wuchen temple has become a gathering camp for these rich young masters. Xiao Chen was so angry that he laughed and said with a sneer. Chen Mo didn't say anything when he heard Xiao Chen's words. He just stood there silently. After forcefully suppressing his anger, Xiao Chen looked at Chen Mo and said, "Pass down my orders. All the disciples of the Wuchen Sacred Hall will undergo the test again in 3 days. From prospective successors to ordinary disciples, everyone must participate. Anyone who doesn't participate will automatically be considered as having forfeited and will be expelled from the Wuchen Sacred Hall and the Sacred Palace." All the disciples of the Wuchen Sacred Hall would undergo the test again. All the elders present were stunned when they heard this. The successor was going to kill them. While all the elders were stunned, Xiao Chun continued. In addition, all those who didn't pass the test and entered the Wuchen Sacred Hall will be disqualified and expelled from the Wuchen Sacred Hall and the Sacred Palace. The Grand Elder will personally supervise this matter. These black sheep must be expelled from the Sacred Palace within 3 days. The 548 disciples who entered the Sacred Palace through connections didn't even have the right to take the test. The elders were even more shocked when they heard this. At this point, anyone could tell that Xiao Chun was really angry this time. However, Chen Mo had no choice but to brace himself in the face of Xiao Chen's anger. "Successor, what about the Xiao clan's main disciples? Are they the same?" Chen Mo had to ask clearly about the Xiao clan's main disciples. After all, they were all Xiao Chen's clansmen. Xiao Chen's face darkened when he heard Chen Mo's words. He said coldly, "Grand Elder, didn't you hear me clearly? I said that all those who didn't participate in the test and entered the Wuchen Sacred Hall will be expelled, regardless of their identity. Do you understand?" "I understand." Chen Mo nodded. He sighed inwardly. That was good. As long as he had Xiao Chen's words, he wouldn't have any other concerns. Xiao Chun had gathered all the elders here to talk about this matter. Xiao Chun immediately looked at everyone and said, "Go. Prepare for the test in 3 days. After 3 days, everyone in the Wuchen Sacred Hall will be tested again, and the disciples will be divided again." With that, Xiao Chun stood up and disappeared from the hall. Only with Xiao Chen's departure did the elders breathe a long sigh of relief. After all these years of growth, Xiao Chun was still young, but the oppressive power he exuded made the half-saint elders feel a lingering fear. In addition, Xiao Chen's strength was no weaker than a half-saint, so the oppressive power he exuded was naturally even stronger. Now that Xiao Chun had left, the elders walked out of the hall together. As the great elder, Chen Mo was naturally surrounded by a lot of people, and many of them were asking him questions. "Grand Elder, the chosen saint's actions this time will probably cause great waves in the Wuchen Sacred Hall." "That's right. Grand Elder, do you think the chosen saint is truly angry this time? He showed no mercy to the members of the Xiao clan. Don't let your imagination run wild. Just your best. The chosen saint didn't blame us this time. But if something like this happens again in the future, I'm afraid we won't be able to escape punishment even though we're half-saint elders," Chen Mo said indifferently in response to everyone's questions. He could understand Xiao Chun. How could someone like Xiao Chun allow a few rats to spoil the entire pot of soup that was the Wuchen's sacred hall? Therefore, even if it was the members of the Xiao clan, Xiao Chun wouldn't show any mercy. The elders went off to make preparations. At the same time, Xiao Chun, who had returned to the cave, went directly to the courtyard where his parents were. Seeing that Qin Shiru and the other girls were there, Xiao Chun heaved a sigh of relief and said to Enlan and Lu Zhu, "Fei Ru Fei and Fei Ru come back. I'll personally deal with the matters of the Xiao clan." Xiao Chen knew that Fei Mei and the other 3 girls had gone there under by Ru Yue's orders. Their purpose was to warn the Xiao clan not to go overboard. However, in Xiao Chen's opinion, this was no longer necessary. He had to deal with the Xiao clan's matters himself. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 1122. He told Fei Mei and the other 2 girls to come back directly and that there was no need to say anything to the Xiao family. After that, Xiao Chun chatted with Bai Riyue and Xiao Qing for a while. The 2 elders did not ask a single word about the Xiao family. Obviously, the 2 elders had thought it through and handed over the matter to Xiao Chun. The 2 elders were not unreasonable people. They also knew that at this time, if they asked Xiao Chun for anything, it would only make things difficult for Xiao Chun. Compared to Xiao Chun, the Xiao family's position in the 2 elders' hearts was naturally far inferior. Therefore, the 2 elders chose to ignore it. As long as their family was well, it was enough. It might be a little selfish to say this, but there was no other way. Some people in the Xiao family were really too much. After chatting with the 2 elders for a while, Xiao Chun was dragged by Tian Yu to the holy region to play around. This woman was really big-hearted. Xiao Chun was already upset because of the Xiao family's matter, but this woman still wanted to accompany him. In addition, Qin Shiru and the other 2 girls also asked Xiao Chun to accompany Tian Yu more. After all, she was a guest from afar. Xiao Chun had no choice but to accompany Tian Yu to stroll around the holy region. The holy region was very big, and there were naturally many places with beautiful scenery. He also knew what was going on. Tian Yu was very happy today, and in turn, she even enlightened Xiao Chun. Strolling by a famous lake in the holy region, Tian Yu said with a smile on her face, "Well, our great holy son Xiao, the Xiao family is making you so upset. You don't have to go so far, right? The matter will be settled eventually. What's the point of being angry here alone? Moreover, you came out to play with me today, so you have to be happy." The Xiao family naturally did not pose any threat to Xiao Chun. In addition, this matter was only done by a portion of the Xiao family. It was not to say that the entire Xiao family had changed. Under Tianyue's guidance, Xiao Chun also gradually relaxed. Indeed, there would always be a time when things would be resolved. Moreover, he had already made arrangements and believed that there would not be any problems. After accompanying Tianyue for a day in the sanctuary, Xiao Chun didn't do anything else for the next few days. However, after the news that Xiao Chun ordered all the disciples of Wuchen Temple to go through the assessment again spread, many disciples of Wuchen Temple were shocked. Everyone was reevaluated and reevaluated. This caused many people to feel conflicted. Of course, the ones who were the most dissatisfied were naturally the disciples of the various large clans who had entered through connections. They had joined the sacred palace and the unsullied sacred hall without going through the assessment. Xiao Chen's order was simple: expel all of them from the sacred palace. Therefore, on the second day, Xiao Chun ordered all of them to leave the sacred palace before tomorrow. Otherwise, the unsullied sacred hall would have no choice but to use force to expel them. The disciples of the various large clans naturally couldn't agree to being expelled from the sacred palace. However, they didn't have the courage to disobey Xiao Chen's order. At night, the several hundred disciples of the various large clans gathered together in fear. Among them, a young man in the uniform of a core disciple was brought to the main seat. The young man was able to command the young masters of the various large clans not because of his strength, but because of his identity. He was a member of the Xiao family, and his bloodline was closer to the main branch of the Xiao family. His name was Xiao Tianyang, and he was currently sitting on the main seat. Xiao Tianyang's expression wasn't very good. On the contrary, it was somewhat gloomy. In terms of seniority, Xiao Tianyang could be considered Xiao Chen's cousin. Of course, this cousin was only a distant cousin. After all, he wasn't a disciple of the main branch of the Xiao family. He was only a disciple of the side branch. However, such a side branch disciple status was already unreachable in the eyes of the young masters of the various large clans. This was because he was related to Xiao Chun. Originally, Xiao Tianyang's days could be said to be very carefree due to the respect and pursuit of these young masters of the various large clans. He used Xiao Chen's name to act like a tyrant in the unsullied sacred hall. Although he was a core disciple, even direct disciples didn't dare to offend him in the slightest. This made Xiao Tianyang, who had lived in the Lingshan County city since he was young and didn't have a high status, suddenly feel like a crow had turned into a phoenix. He liked this feeling very much. Those young masters and young ladies who were unreachable in his eyes when he was young were now all thinking of ways to curry favor with him. Even the young ladies of the large clans were willing to give themselves to him. This made Xiao Tianyang smile even in his sleep. Unfortunately, because of Xiao Chen's order, Xiao Tianyang's good days were about to come to an end. If he was expelled from the sacred palace, where could he go with his talent? Obviously, he could only return to the Lingshan County city. After witnessing the prosperity of the outside world and the power of the sacred palace, how could Xiao Tianyang be willing to leave? Therefore, he was in a very bad mood. Sensing Xiao Tianyang's gloomy expression, the many young masters below spoke up one after another. Young Master Xiao, what should we do now? Chosen Xiao Chun has already given the order. We must leave the sacred palace before tomorrow. Yes, young Master Xiao. Why don't you go and plead with the Chosen? After all, you are the Chosen's cousin. I believe he will listen to you. These young masters were so respectful to Xiao Tianyang because of his relationship with Xiao Chun. Now that something had happened, Xiao Tianyang naturally had to plead with Xiao Chun. However, only Xiao Tianyang knew that he wasn't familiar with Xiao Chun at all. They had only met a few times since they were young. Asking Xiao Chun to plead? What a joke. He understood this, but he couldn't say it out loud. Therefore, Xiao Tianyang could only suffer in silence, unable to voice out his grievances. He couldn't plead with Xiao Chun, and Xiao Tianyang wasn't willing to leave the sacred palace. Moreover, Xiao Tianyang vaguely understood that Xiao Chun was doing this mainly because of the Xiao clan. Some of the Xiao clan's actions had thoroughly angered Xiao Chun. Therefore, Xiao Chun was preparing to take action against the Xiao clan. Helplessness and unwillingness intertwined in Xiao Tianyang's heart. In the end, these various emotions turned into a kind of madness. Xiao Chun, we are all members of the Xiao clan. Now that you've succeeded, what's wrong with our Xiao clan basking in some of your glory? Why must you be so heartless? I'm your cousin. I don't believe you can do anything to me. Xiao Tianyang had sunk into madness. He didn't want to lose the luxurious life before him. Therefore, after a moment of silence, Xiao Tianyang coldly said, Everyone, I know my cousin's character very well. It's useless to plead now. We can only think of a way to make him lower his head and constantly put pressure on him so that he has no choice but to change his previous decision. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 11:23. Xiao Tianyang had gone completely mad. He actually wanted to go against Xiao Chun. This was simply a joke. Who was he, and who was Xiao Chun? Xiao Tianyang was merely a core disciple who had gotten in through the back door. He actually dared to disobey Xiao Chen's orders. As the saying goes, evil comes from courage. With this thought, Xiao Tianyang threw caution to the wind. Of course, in Xiao Tianyang's opinion, he was just going all out. Even if he couldn't defeat Xiao Chun in the end, he could still return to Lingshan County City. He and Xiao Chun were cousins. He couldn't allow Xiao Chun to do anything to him. Could it be that Xiao Chun even dared to kill his own clansmen? Xiao Tianyang believed that Xiao Chun wouldn't do anything to him. This was what he was truly relying on. Hearing Xiao Tianyang's words, the surrounding young masters and young mistresses were puzzled. Young Master Xiao, what do you mean? Do you want us to go against Lord Saint? Aren't you just sending us to our deaths? A bunch of idiots. Who asked you to go against my cousin? I'm only saying to give him some pressure. This time, my cousin isn't just targeting us. All the disciples of the unsullied sacred hall must be re-evaluated. I can see that many people are dissatisfied. Say, if someone successfully incites everyone's dissatisfaction behind his back, will my cousin still be able to act willfully in the face of the opposition of all the disciples of the unsullied sacred hall? Xiao Tianyang sneered softly. The young masters and young mistresses were stunned by his words. It had to be said that Xiao Tianyang had truly changed. Facing so many young masters and young mistresses, he actually called them idiots. However, these young masters and young mistresses didn't dare to show the slightest dissatisfaction. This was the benefit of authority. Therefore, Xiao Tianyang wasn't willing to give up. No matter what, he had to go all out. After a brief moment of astonishment, someone quickly regained his senses. He looked at Xiao Tianyang in shock and said, "Young Master Xiao, are you saying that we should incite the other disciples?" This young master was rather quick-witted. He quickly understood Xiao Tianyang's intentions. It was very simple. Xiao Tianyang wanted the young masters and young mistresses present to incite the other disciples of the unsullied sacred hall so that everyone would oppose Xiao Chen's decision. That way, there would be hope of forcing Xiao Chen to change his decision. Hearing this, Xiao Tianyang nodded. Then, after a night of secret planning, they finally came to an agreement. Then, these young masters and young ladies, who could be said to be at the end of their rope, began to take action. They secretly roped in disciples from all over and made them voice their opposition to Xiao Chen's decision. Xiao Chen was still unaware of the plan of Xiao Tianyang and the others. The next morning, Xiao Chen was cultivating in the courtyard as usual. Today was the third day, and also the final deadline that Xiao Chen had given to Xiao Tianyang and the others. Before sunset today, Xiao Tianyang and the others who had not passed the assessment had to leave the sacred palace. Otherwise, Xiao Chen would have to chase them away by force. Xiao Chen wasn't worried about Xiao Tianyang and the others. What could a group of profligate young masters possibly do? Moreover, Xiao Chen was in charge of this matter, so he wasn't worried at all. But very soon, Chun Mo hastily arrived outside the dwelling and requested to see Xiao Chen. He asked Lan to bring Chun Mo over. Xiao Chen noticed that Chun Mo's complexion was very bad when he saw him, so he asked out of curiosity, "What's wrong, great elder? Why do you look so miserable so early in the morning?" Chun Mo didn't beat around the bush and directly said, "Chosen, there's been some hiccups." It turned out that early in the morning, many disciples in the dustless sacred hall had banded together to oppose Xiao Chen's decision and beg Xiao Chen to retract his order. If it was only a small number of disciples, there would naturally be no need to pay attention to them. But there were too many of them, almost half of all the disciples in the dustless sacred hall. Although Guru Wuya and the others were still contending with so many disciples, the results were minimal. It was as if these people had planned this beforehand. Xiao Chen's face darkened slightly when he heard Chun Mo's words. So many disciples have suddenly banded together to oppose. It seems that someone is adding fuel to the fire behind this matter. Investigate. I want to see who's so bold. So many people had suddenly stood up to oppose. There was definitely someone behind this instigation. Chun Mo had to thoroughly investigate this matter and find out who was behind it. Chun Mo quickly withdrew after receiving Xiao Chen's order and began to thoroughly investigate this matter. At the same time, Xiao Chen already had some guesses in his heart. Secretly inciting so many disciples, it was most likely the young masters and young ladies of the large clans. Only they had the motive to do so. They really don't know what's good for them. Xiao Chen secretly cursed. Originally, he didn't intend to argue with these young masters and young ladies. But who would have thought that they actually didn't know what was good for them? Xiao Chen secretly cursed. At this time, Tian Yu strode in and heard Xiao Chen's cursing from afar. Tian Yu said with a smile, "What's the matter? It's so early in the morning. Who made our great holy son Xiao angry?" "It's just a small matter," Xiao Chen replied. Xiao Chen didn't intend to tell Tian Yu about this matter, but in the end, He couldn't stand Tian Yu's coaxing and pestering. He told her about this matter and also told her his own guess. Hearing that Xiao Chun believed that it was those young masters and young ladies who did it, Tian Yu slightly smiled and said, "Those young masters and young ladies are definitely involved, but they shouldn't be the mastermind because they don't have the guts. As long as they aren't brainless people, they definitely won't go against you in the dustless sacred hall. So the mastermind should be someone else." "Not them? Then who could it be?" Xiao Qin said. "Haven't you already guessed it?" Tian Yu smiled. Without waiting for Xiao Chun to speak, Tian Yu stood up and said in a bored manner, "All right, it seems like you aren't in the mood to accompany me today. I'll go look for Shui Ro and the others." After saying that, Tian Yu left the courtyard, leaving Xiao Chun alone in the courtyard with a complicated expression. Those young masters and young ladies didn't have the guts, so who could the mastermind be? In fact, the answer was already self-evident. In the dustless sacred hall, who else could have the guts to go against him and wasn't afraid that he would kill them except for the Xiao clan? Xiao Chun already had a guess in his heart, but he wasn't willing to believe it. However, the truth often made people feel helpless. Later in the afternoon, Chen Mo came again. He had already investigated the matter, and the mastermind behind it was Xiao Chen's clan brother, Xiao Tianyang. Hearing Chen Mo's words, Xiao Chen's face sank and a cold light flickered in his eyes. He really is a member of the Xiao clan. Xiao Chen unconsciously said in a cold voice. "Do you really think that I won't dare to kill you just because you're a member of the Xiao clan? Good, Xiao Tianyang. Great Elder, immediately arrest Xiao Tianyang and everyone involved in this matter. In addition, pass down my orders. Xiao Tianyang has violated the rules of the Sacred Hall and will be executed immediately after the test is over. As for the others, cripple their cultivation and expel them from the Sacred Hall. They will be sent to various spirit veins to work as laborers, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 1124. Xiao Chun ordered coldly. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's order, Grand Elder Chen Mo was taken aback. After staring blankly for a few moments, Chen Mo cautiously said, "Holy Son, Xiao Tianyang is..." He didn't expect Xiao Chun to actually want to kill Xiao Tianyang. Chen Mo originally wanted to remind Xiao Chun that Xiao Tianyang was a member of the Xiao family, but before he could finish, Xiao Chun coldly interrupted him. "Nothing can be accomplished without rules. The Sacred Palace has its own rules. Don't tell me that just because you're a member of the Xiao family, you can violate them without restraint. Inciting the disciples to riot is already a capital offense. No matter who you are, you must be punished according to the law. Grand Elder, if you can't do it, I'll just replace you with someone else." Xiao Chun was already somewhat dissatisfied with Chen Mo's attitude. In Xiao Chen's opinion, Chen Mo had too many concerns and wasn't as decisive as a Grand Elder. Sensing Xiao Chen's unwillingness, Chen Mo hurriedly nodded in response and repeatedly promised that he would handle the matter well. Upon seeing this, Xiao Chun dismissed Chen Mo. After Chen Mo left, Xiao Chun sat alone in the main hall with an ugly expression on his face. Xiao Tianyang had indeed gone too far this time. Xiao Chun had originally planned to spare Xiao Tianyang's life and expel him from the Sacred Palace. But since Xiao Tianyang was courting death, there was no one to blame but himself. Xiao Tianyang clearly didn't expect Xiao Chen's anger to be so fierce and come so quickly. It had only been half a day since the Xiao family's young masters took action, but the entire Dustless Temple's punishment hall was mobilized under the leadership of Guduya and Huang Fueo. They immediately began arresting people in the Dustless Temple. All the young masters and young ladies who participated in this incident were arrested and locked up in the Dustless Temple's dungeon to await their execution. Xiao Chen's actions were swift and merciless. Following the actions of the law enforcement hall, the disciples who had been in an uproar in the unsullied sacred temple instantly fell silent and no longer objected to Xiao Chen's decision. As they watched the punishment hall wantonly arrest people, the people of the unsullied sacred hall finally realized that resisting the chosen one Xiao Chun here was absolutely courting death. It was laughable that they had thought that they could resist Xiao Chun by joining forces. Little did they know that this would only enrage Xiao Chun even more. The arrest didn't last long and ended in less than 2 hours. As for Xiao Tianyang, after he was personally arrested by Good Wuya, he was still shouting mischievously along the way. "Let me go. What are you doing? Do you people from the disciplinary hall want to die? Do you know who I am? I'm the chosen one, Xiao Chen's cousin. How dare you arrest me?" Xiao Tianyang was still using Xiao Chen's authority to act tyrannically even though he was at death's door. Little did he know that as soon as he finished speaking, Good Wuya didn't give him any face and directly slapped him. "I know you're from the Xiao family, but the chosen one personally ordered your arrest. So save it." The arrest of Xiao Tianyang was personally ordered by Xiao Chun, so Good Wuya and the others didn't feel the slightest pressure. Xiao Tianyang was stunned when he heard that. The development of the situation seemed to be completely different from what he had imagined. After being stunned for a moment, Xiao Tianyang opened his mouth and shouted again. "I don't believe it. I want the chosen one. I want my cousin Xiao Chun. Let me go." Xiao Tianyang shouted that he wanted to see Xiao Chun, but Good Wuya and the others obviously ignored him and directly locked him up in the dungeon. Following the disciplinary hall's thunderous actions, the situation in the Wuchen's sacred hall quickly quieted down. However, the other 9 sacred halls of the sacred palace naturally noticed the commotion in the Wuchen's sacred hall over the past few days. The chosen were all curious about what was going on with Xiao Chun. Why did he make such a big move? Some people didn't know what had happened in the Wuchen sacred hall, but people like Chun Ling, Long Qing, and the others who were more familiar with Xiao Chun naturally knew why Xiao Chun was doing this. However, whether they knew the reason or not, the chosen had no intention of interfering. Moreover, they couldn't interfere at all. The matters of the Wuchen sacred hall weren't something they could meddle in. Countless pairs of eyes were fixed on the Wuchen sacred hall. At the same time, in Xiao Chen's residence, Qin Shu and the others hurried back after hearing that Xiao Chun had captured the young masters, young ladies, and Xiao Tianyang. Seeing that Xiao Chen's expression was a little ugly, the 3 women didn't dare to ask too much. They stayed by Xiao Chen's side and asked about what happened. In the end, when they learned that Xiao Chun planned to execute Xiao Tianyang, the 3 women were a little shocked. "Husband, Xiao Tianyang is still a member of the Xiao clan. Isn't it a little too much to kill him like this?" Qin Shura looked at Xiao Chun and said, "Xiao Chen's killing of Xiao Tianyang would definitely attract the opposition of some members of the Xiao clan. When that happened, they would all be a family, and their relationship wouldn't be easy to handle." Qin Shuru's worries weren't without reason. However, Xiao Chun had already decided on this matter. Since Xiao Tianyang liked to cause trouble, then he would execute him as an example to others. Since he had already made his decision, Xiao Chun said calmly after hearing Qin Shuru's words, "Xiao Tianyang must die. However, who is he? He has violated the rules of the palace and must be punished." Xiao Chun had already made up his mind. Qin Shuru and the others didn't say anything else. They understood Xiao Chen's character very well. They knew that Xiao Chun was very stubborn. Once he had decided on something, it was basically impossible to change his mind. On the second day after Xiao Tianyang and the others were captured, the re-examination of all the disciples of the Wuchen Sacred Hall officially began. From the prospective saints to the ordinary disciples, everyone had to go through the re-examination. At the same time, if they failed the examination, they would be directly demoted to the rank of general until they were demoted to a nominal disciple. No one dared to disobey Xiao Chun. Therefore, every disciple of the Wuchen Sacred Hall attached great importance to this examination. They didn't want to be directly kicked out of the Wuchen Sacred Hall and be demoted to a nominal disciple with no status to speak of. The examination was completely handed over to Chen Mo and the other elders. Under the control of the elders, the examination was carried out in an orderly manner. However, it was naturally impossible to complete the examination with so many people in a day. According to the plan, the re-examination would last for 7 days. During these 7 days, all the disciples had to complete the examination. while Xiao Chun was re-examining the disciples of the Wuchen Sacred Hall in a courtyard in the Lingshan Commandery City Xiao clan. This courtyard was the residence of Xiao Tianyang's parents. Xiao Tianyang's parents, who were used to living a life of luxury, were currently sitting in the front hall with a worried expression. Xiao Tianyang's father was sighing constantly, without his usual dignity. The woman beside him was sobbing softly. At the same time, over a dozen Xiao clan members were sitting in a circle in the front hall, begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1125. Xiao Tianyang's parents and a group of Xiao family members sat together in a circle. Everyone wore a grave expression. It was obvious that they already knew what happened in the sacred palace. Xiao Tianyang's parents were undoubtedly in the worst mood because Xiao Tianyang had been captured by Xiao Chun. According to the news from the sacred palace, Xiao Chun intended to execute Xiao Tianyang directly. How can Xiao Chun kill his master? Even if Tianyang is in the wrong, he's still a member of our Xiao family. How can Xiao Chun do that? After a moment of silence, a middle-aged man with a rough appearance spoke first. He was Xiao Tianyang's uncle. It was obvious that he was very dissatisfied with Xiao Chun's decision. He felt that Xiao Chun was too ruthless and wouldn't even let off a member of his own family. However, after hearing his words, another member of the Xiao clan sighed and said, "That's right. I've already told all of you that some things can't be overdone. Chinner can take care of the Xiao family, but he will never allow the Xiao family to become a black sheep." So sigh. They had long anticipated that such a day would come. Everyone was talking amongst themselves, and at this moment, the Xiao family's patriarch arrived. The people present were all collateral relatives of the Xiao clan. When they heard that the clan master had arrived, they naturally stood up to welcome him, especially Xiao Tianyang's parents. When they saw the clan master outside the courtyard, the two of them knelt down with a plop. Xiao Tianyang's mother even spoke in a tearful voice. "Patriarch, I beg you to save Tianyang. He's still a member of our Xiao family." Xiao Tianyang's mother begged bitterly, but the patriarch responded with a complicated expression. "There's no turning back. I can't help even if I want to." Who could change Xiao Chen's decision? Upon hearing this, Xiao Tianyang's mother couldn't catch her breath and fainted. Seeing this, the servants hurriedly carried her away to rest. The patriarch couldn't bear to see Xiao Tianyang's father's sorrowful face. At the same time, he blamed himself. "Sai, it's all my fault. If I had stopped you earlier, this wouldn't have happened." Some of the branch families of the Xiao clan had wantonly married into the Xiao clan. This was the main culprit and also the reason why things had developed to this point. As the patriarch, he knew very well that Xiao Chun would definitely order the Xiao clan to reorganize. When that time came, the entire Xiao clan would probably be in a real mess. However, he could only blame himself for this. There was clearly no other way to deal with Xiao Tianyang's matter. Although he could still plead with Xiao Qing and by Ru Yue, the two of them were currently in the sacred palace, and he couldn't even see them. Moreover, using voice transmission talismans was like throwing a stone into the sea. There was no reply at all. What the Xiao clan members didn't know was that the two elders didn't see the voice transmission talismans they gave to Xiao Qing and by Ru Yue. They were intercepted by Qin Shu and the other two women on the way. It was easy for Qin Shu and the other two women to cut off contact between the two elders and the outside world. What's more, the two elders didn't want to pay attention to these matters. They would only be annoyed if they knew, so they might as well choose not to know. The Xiao clan patriarch's guess was correct. The next day, Xiao Qin's order was sent from the sacred palace to the Xiao clan in Lingshan City. In the main hall of the Xiao clan manor, the patriarch looked at the voice transmission talisman in his hand with an ugly expression. After a long while, he smiled helplessly and said, "Sai, if you knew this would happen, you wouldn't have done it in the first place." Xiao Qin's order was very simple. It was a single sentence, and he wanted the Xiao clan to purge the entire clan. The order was very simple, but the Xiao clan patriarch clearly knew what Xiao Qin wanted. Xiao Qin clearly didn't want to see those rats again. It was impossible for him to disobey Xiao Qin's order. That was why the Shao clan patriarch said such a thing after receiving the order. The Wuchen Sacred Hall's assessment was still in progress. At the same time, the Shao clan's internal affairs were also temporarily mobilized. Those Shao clan members who had done illegal things were all punished. The light punishment was whipping or having their monthly allowance deducted. The heavy punishment was being sent back to the clan and having nothing to do with the Shao clan in the future. Shao Chun was naturally aware of the Shao clan patriarch's actions. Shao Chun was very satisfied with his performance. He believed that after this purge, such a thing wouldn't happen again in the Shao clan. Time passed day by day. 7 days later, the Wuchen Sacred Hall's assessment ended. All the disciples had participated in the assessment, and Shao Chun was gratified that none of the disciples had been eliminated because they weren't strong enough. These people had all been admitted to the unsullied temple after passing the formal assessment. Now that they had been reassessed, they were indeed the real deal. Shao Chun felt a bit better about this. After the assessment ended, the Shao clan's reorganization was still in progress. On the second day after the assessment ended, Shao Chun issued an order to publicly execute Shao Tianyang. At noon, Shao Tianyang was suppressed on the main square of the Wuchen Sacred Hall. Many disciples of the Wuchen Sacred Hall were terrified. Until now, many people still didn't believe that Shao Chun would really execute Shao Tianyang. After all, Shao Tianyang was a member of the Shao clan. However, the facts quickly proved that Shao Chun wasn't lying. He wouldn't let Shao Tianyang off just because he was a member of the Shao clan. Shao Chun didn't show himself. Instead, he asked Gudu Wuya to come forward. Following Gudu Wuya's order, Shao Tianyang's head fell to the ground. Until his death, Shao Tianyang didn't dare to believe that Shao Chun would actually execute him. Moreover, he didn't hesitate at all and was extremely decisive. Shao Tianyang's death caused the surrounding disciples to open their mouths in shock. At the same time, Shao Chun also clearly conveyed a message to all the disciples of the Wuchen Sacred Hall. That was, in the Wuchen Sacred Hall, no matter who it was or what status they had, they would be punished if they violated the rules of the Sacred Hall. For a moment, many disciples were filled with deep veneration. Correspondingly, after this incident, there wouldn't be another person like Shao Tianyang in the Wuchen Sacred Hall who used his status to commit outrages. This was because Shao Chun could even execute his own clansmen, let alone others. Everyone understood that from today onwards, the Wuchen Sacred Hall didn't care about status or family background. It only cared about strength. The stronger one was, the higher one's status and the better one's treatment. The two complemented each other. After Shao Tianyang was executed, the other young masters and young mistresses were crippled of their cultivation and sent to various spirit veins to work as laborers. Although the various large clans and sects were pained by this, they clearly didn't dare to reason with Shao Chun. Therefore, the entire process wasn't obstructed in any way. After dealing with the Shao clan's matter with lightning speed, Shao Chun secretly heaved a sigh of relief in his abode. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1126. The Unsullied Temple was purged by Shao Chun with an iron fist, and the members of the Shao clan who used to flaunt their power were punished one after another. Of course, Shao Chun didn't punish all the Shao family members. Shao Chun didn't make things difficult for the Shao family members who didn't violate the rules of the Sacred Hall and had passed the test to enter the Wuchen Sacred Hall. In fact, Shao Chun's idea was very simple. He only wanted to treat everyone equally in the Wuchen Sacred Hall, no matter what identity or family background. As long as they entered the Sacred Palace and the Wuchen Sacred Hall, it didn't matter. All that mattered was strength. Shao Chun didn't want the Wuchen Sacred Hall to become a place that paid attention to family background and identity. Shao Chun was more willing to see that. Therefore, the disciples of the Wuchen Sacred Hall respected strength. This was because only in this way could the Wuchen Sacred Hall and the Sacred Palace develop better and truly stand tall in the North Star boundary. Moreover, Shao Chun was the first chosen of the Sacred Palace, and the Wuchen Sacred Hall was the first of the 10 great sacred halls. Therefore, Xiao Qin's requirements for the Wuchen Sacred Hall were naturally high. After doing all this, Xiao Qin didn't care about the Xiao family's matters. The Xiao family's patriarch handled it personally. Xiao Qin only wanted results. Of course, there were people who reported the Xiao family situation to Xiao Qin anytime and anywhere. After this incident, Xiao Qin felt that it was necessary to strengthen the supervision of the Xiao family. Therefore, Xiao Qin also specially divided some of the Wuchen Sacred Hall's forces to closely monitor the Xiao family's every move. After the incident, Xiao Qin's mood also relaxed. It was rare for him to have a meal with by Ruyue and Xiao Qinwu. After returning to his residence at night, Xiao Qin and Qin Shuru sat and chatted in the courtyard. At this time, 100 Flower Fairy said with a smile, "Husband, you should take some time out these few days to accompany Tianyue. She came all the way here. I'm afraid it's not good for you to leave her alone." Hearing 100 Flower Fairy's words, Xiao Qin thought about it and felt that it made sense, so he nodded and agreed. Seeing Xiao Qin nod in agreement, the three women looked at each other and smiled. In fact, because Xiao Qin was busy dealing with the Xiao family's affairs these days, Qin Shuru and the other two women had been accompanying Tianyue. After a few days of getting along, the four women had talked a lot. At the same time, Qin Shuru and the others could see that Tianyue really liked Xiao Qin. This was undeniable. However, no matter if it was Tianyue or Xiao Qin, neither of them seemed to have taken this matter seriously. Therefore, their feelings for each other were hazy. As for Xiao Qin and Tianyue, Qin Shuru and the other two girls did not object. Besides, they believed that no one would dislike an outstanding woman like Tianyue. They did not object to Tianyue becoming Xiao Qin's woman, but the three girls did not have the final say in this matter. In any case, let nature take its course. It all depended on whether the two of them were fated to be together. After a silent night, Xiao Qin arrived at Tianyue's residence early in the morning. At this time, Tianyue had already woken up and was cultivating in the courtyard. Seeing Xiao Qin walk over, Tianyue smiled happily and said, "What's wrong? Our great holy son, Xiao, finally has time today?" I was careless. But now that there's nothing else, I can accompany you." Xiao Qin replied with a smile. For the time being, nothing would happen. In the following days, Xiao Qin could accompany Tianyue to explore the Saint Palace and the heavenly Qin continent. Hearing Xiao Qin's words, Tianyue was naturally happy. Without hesitation, the two of them immediately left the Saint region and headed to the heavenly Qin continent. The Saint region had already been explored by Tianyue, so the two of them directly headed to the heavenly Qin continent. For the next period of time, Xiao Qin accompanied Tianyue, and the two of them quickly set foot in the 5 major regions of the heavenly Qin continent. After this period of time together, the relationship between the two of them became more intimate. However, this last layer of window paper was not broken. This made Qin Shuru and the other two girls angry and amused. In fact, this matter could not be blamed on Tianyue. It was because Xiao Qin was already experienced. How could Xiao Qin not have any feelings for Tianyue? However, Xiao Qin remembered that back in the Heavenly River continent, he had already made an agreement with Qin Shuru and the other two girls. Therefore, regarding Tianyue's feelings, Xiao Qin could only choose to turn a blind eye and play dumb. Xiao Qin played dumb, and Tianyue was thin-skinned and did not know how to open her mouth, so the matter between the two of them was dragged on. Regarding this, Qin Shuru and the other two girls were both angry and amused. The three girls were very gratified that Xiao Qin could still remember the agreement. But then again, the three girls were not against Tianyue, especially the little girl Guling Yao, whose relationship with Tianyue was unbelievably good. Perhaps it was because the two girls were very lively, so as long as there was nothing to do, Guling Yao and Tianyue would stay together. They would either play together or cultivate together. With such a good relationship, if Xiao Qin really liked Tianyue, the three girls would naturally not oppose it. After half a month, Xiao Qin and Tianyue were still unclear. On this day, Qin Shuru and the other two girls finally decided to have a good talk with Xiao Qin. In the courtyard, the three girls specially called Xiao Chen over. After taking a seat, Xiao Chun looked at the three girls' incomparably serious expressions. Puzzled, Xiao Chen asked, "What's wrong? Why did you call me over?" Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Flower Fairy smiled unpleasantly and said, "We were almost worried to death because of you. Today, I called our husband over mainly to ask about something." "Oh, what is it? Say it." Hearing this, Xiao Chun smiled and said. Seeing this, Flower Fairy did not beat around the bush and asked straightforwardly, "Husband, do you like Tianyue or not? You should be able to feel Tianyue's feelings, right? Did he like Tianyue or not?" He did not expect Flower Fairy to ask such a question. Regarding this, Xiao Chun was stunned. Then he smiled helplessly and said, "I can feel it, but did he not have feelings for Tianyue?" Xiao Chun obviously did not. For a woman like Tianyue, no man would not have feelings for her. Not only was she strong, but she also had a lively personality. Her appearance was even better, comparable to Qin Shuru and the other two girls. Therefore, if Xiao Chun said that he did not have feelings for Tianyue, he would definitely be lying. However, he had promised the three girls that he would not look for other women. Therefore, for a moment, Xiao Chun did not know what to say. After all, although Tianyue was good, she was still not his woman. In Xiao Chen's heart, her position could not be compared to Qin Shuru and the other two girls. Seeing that Xiao Chun did not know how to explain, Qin Shuru said softly, "Husband, if you also like Tianyue, we have no objections. Tianyue is a good girl. We like her very much," Qin Shuru said. Hearing this, Xiao Chen's expression changed slightly. His gaze swept across the three girls, and for a moment, he did not know what to say. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. If you want to talk about Sword Master of 8 Baron with more like-minded people, follow excellent reading literature on WeChat. Talking about life, looking for confidence. Chapter 11:27. With a puzzled look on his face, Xiao Chen didn't understand why the three girls would suddenly say that. One must know that back in the Tiana continent, the three girls had unanimously decided that he couldn't find other women. It was also because of this that Xiao Chen had avoided other women ever since. This included Tianyue. Despite knowing that Tianyue had feelings for him, Xiao Chen still chose to turn a blind eye and play dumb in order to not make the three girls sad. But now, Qin Shuru actually said that? What exactly were the three girls up to? With doubts in his heart, Xiao Chen also secretly became vigilant, fearing that the three girls were deliberately digging a hole for him to jump into. Seeing Xiao Chen's puzzled expression, Gu Lingyao said snappily, "Brother Xiao Chen, do you like Sister Tianyue or not? How can a man like you be so timid?" Faced with Xiao Chen's hesitation and doubt, Gu Lingyao was obviously unhappy, but in response, Xiao Chen retaliated in his heart. "Timid? Little girl, this young master is just afraid that you're digging a hole for me to jump into." Although this was what he thought, Xiao Chen definitely couldn't say out loud. Therefore, he could only pretend that he didn't understand anything and asked, "What do you mean by this?" He had to figure out what the three girls were up to before making a decision. Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, the three girls looked at each other with a helpless expression. Why was this man so nervous? Was this still the first chosen of the sacred palace, the idol of countless people, Xiao Chen? Of course, the three girls didn't know that Xiao Chen could ignore the feelings of others and do what he wanted to do outside, but Xiao Chen couldn't do that with them. Xiao Chen didn't want the three girls to be unhappy at all, and he didn't want them to be hurt because of him. It was also because of this that Xiao Chen would rather give up on Tianyue than make the three women sad. Smiling bitterly, Qin Shuru said, "Okay, let's get straight to the point. We just want to tell you that Tianyue is not bad. If you like her, you can accept her. We all agree. Do you understand, husband?" Among the three women, Qin Shuru's personality was the most straightforward, so she spoke bluntly at this time. However, upon hearing this, Xiao Chen said almost instinctively, "What?" He did not expect that the three girls would say something like that. All along, Xiao Chun had been afraid that the three girls would be jealous of him because of his close relationship with Tianyue. Who would have thought that he was worrying for nothing? Not only were the three girls not jealous, but they also supported him to take Tianyue in. This was definitely something that Xiao Chun didn't expect. However, he had already said it. Moreover, the three women didn't look like they were joking. Flower Fairy and Gu Lingyao had faint smiles on their faces. Qin Shuru's expression was still indifferent. Ignoring Xiao Chen's shock, Qin Shuru continued. Husband, you could decide for yourself. Before we called you here, we also talked to Tianyue. If you like her, you can go and find her later. Tianyue will be waiting for you at the residence. As for us, husband, you don't have to worry about us. That's right, that's right. Brother Xiao Chun, we are very good sisters with sister Tianyue, so we won't be jealous of her. Hearing Qin Shuru's words, Gu Lingyao also chimed in. After the two women finished speaking, Qin Shuru pulled them and prepared to leave. As for what happened next, it was up to Xiao Chun to decide. Before they left, Flower Fairy smiled charmingly. Husband, this is a heaven-sent opportunity. It won't come again if you miss it. Don't regret it when the time comes. The three women did as they were told, leaving Xiao Chun sitting alone in the courtyard. After a while, Xiao Chun revealed a bitter smile. It turned out that the three of them had already discussed this beforehand. To think that he had been thinking too much and worrying about this and that. The three women didn't dislike Tianyue and agreed to accept her. However, what about Xiao Chen's decision? In fact, there was nothing to hesitate about. After being together for such a long time, Xiao Chun and Tianyue's feelings for each other had slowly taken root in their hearts. It wasn't impossible for Xiao Chun to give up on Tianyue, but it was certain that he wouldn't feel good about it. It wasn't that he hadn't thought about how he would feel if Tianyue snuggled up in another man's arms one day. The answer was very certain. It would definitely feel bad, absolutely bad. Xiao Chun got up and stretched. Because of Qin Shuru and the other two women's words, the knot in Xiao Chen's heart was completely untied. Since the three women didn't object, how could Xiao Chun let go of such a peerless beauty like Tianyue? Moreover, the two of them had feelings for each other. Xiao Chun liked Tianyue, and Tianyue liked Xiao Chun. Xiao Chun strode towards Tianyue's residence. Just as Qin Shuru said, Tianyue was indeed waiting for him there. Seeing Xiao Chun striding towards her, Tianyue's face turned red and her heart was incomparably nervous. On the other hand, Xiao Chun looked at the shy Tianyue. This was the first time Xiao Chun saw such an expression on Tianyue's face. Stepping in front of Tianyue, Xiao Chun directly said, "Have you talked to Shui Rou and the others?" "Yes, I've talked to them." Tianyue lowered her head and replied in an extremely soft voice. She didn't dare to look directly at Xiao Chun. At this moment, Tianyue didn't look like the first holy maiden of the nine heavens at all. She was exactly the same as those ordinary girls who were unable to extricate themselves from the river of love. Facing such a Tianyue, Xiao Chun didn't say anything else. He grabbed Tianyue's wrist and pulled her into his arms domineeringly. Then, he lowered his head and kissed her fiercely. She didn't expect Xiao Chun to be so direct. Her mind instantly went blank, and she forgot to struggle. Or rather, Tianyue instinctively didn't want to struggle. After talking with Qin Shuru and the others, Tianyue also knew about her feelings for Xiao Chun. To be honest, Tianyue herself didn't know when she started to have feelings for Xiao Chun. However, all of this wasn't important at this moment. After a long time, Xiao Chun finally let go of Tianyue. However, at this moment, Tianyue was already leaning against Xiao Chen's chest. Lowering his head to look at the beautiful woman, Xiao Chun said softly, "From now on, you won't be able to run away. Although I, Xiao Chun, have more than one woman by my side, I will do my best to treat all of you well." Since he had made up his mind to not let Tianyue leave his side, Xiao Chun naturally didn't have any more misgivings. Hearing this, Tianyue blushed and nodded. She didn't say anything. Who would have thought that the first holy maiden of the nine heavens would be nestled in Xiao Chen's arms? Moreover, Xiao Chun had also taken down the women in the hearts of all the heavenly clans. If this news were to spread to the heavenly clans, Xiao Chun would probably become the public enemy of all the men in the heavenly clans, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1128. After receiving Qin Shiru and the other two women's agreement to accept Tianyue, Xiao Chen's mood was naturally incomparably happy. Xiao Chan was not a lustful person, nor was he a person who could not move when he saw a beautiful woman. Compared to the other saints and saintesses, Xiao Chun did not have many women, only 4 in total. Moreover, Xiao Chun could be said to be extremely doting on Qin Shiru and the other two women, which was something that others could not do. That night, Xiao Chun directly stayed at Tianyue's place. Although Tianyue was incomparably shy, she did not refuse. Since she had already fallen in love with this man, many things were logical. The next day, the two of them did not get up until the sun was high in the sky. After washing up, Xiao Chan first took Tianyue to see Bai Ruyue and Xiao Qing. The two elders did not seem to be surprised by the matter between Tianyue and Xiao Chun. At first, Xiao Chun was still a little puzzled, but he quickly thought that it was very likely that Qin Shiru and the other two women had told the two elders about this matter in advance. Therefore, the two elders were already mentally prepared. It seemed that the 3 of them had already thought about it. Regarding this, Xiao Chun was both helpless and secretly happy. If it were not for Qin Shiru and the other two women's agreement, Xiao Chun and Tianyue probably would not have been together. At least, Xiao Chun would not have accepted Tianyue. After greeting the two elders were also very satisfied with Tianyue. Bai Ruyue even chatted with this new daughter-in-law enthusiastically. Not long after Xiao Chun and Tianyue arrived, Qin Shiru and the other two women also arrived. The group of people had lunch at the two elders' place before leaving. After returning to their residence, the 3 women knew that Xiao Chun must have accepted Tianyue, so they did not have any concerns about Tianyue. In addition, the 4 women had been getting along quite well before. Although Tianyue was still a little nervous at first, she soon let go of her worries. The 4 women chattered nonstop. Seeing this, Xiao Chun stood up and said, "I'm going to cultivate." There was no point in staying here at all, so Xiao Chun planned to cultivate. However, he was stopped by Hunter-Flower Fairy. "Husband, wait a moment." She stopped Xiao Chun and then asked Xiao Chun to sit beside her. At this time, the 4 women's expressions became very serious. In the end, it was still Hunter-Flower Fairy spoke. "Husband, although you have tea on you this time, the agreement from before is still valid. Without our consent, you can't find other women." Was there any woman who could compare to the 4 women in front of the 4 women? To be honest, there was no other woman in the entire North. Who else in the entire North who could compare to the 4 women in front of the 4 women before him? Why do you have to go out and pick wildflowers instead of the delicate flowers at home? Xiao Chun wasn't that stupid. Therefore, he naturally didn't have any objections to the agreement. Moreover, he really had to thank Qin Shiru and the other 2 girls for being magnanimous enough to marry Tianyue this time. He agreed without any hesitation. Seeing this, the 4 women were very satisfied with Xiao Chen's attitude. After that, they let Xiao Chun go. As for the 4 women, they naturally had endless things to talk about. Tianyue had just entered the family, so everyone naturally needed to get to know each other. The addition of Tianyue did not change the family. It only became livelier. The original 3 women had now become 4. However, the relationship between the 4 women was still very good. Xiao Chun was naturally very happy about the harmony in his own backyard. His women could be as close as sisters. This saved Xiao Chun a lot of trouble. Therefore, in the following period of time, because there was nothing much to do, Xiao Chun wholeheartedly devoted himself to cultivation. In his spare time, he would accompany the 4 women and his parents. If not, he would also drink with Chunling and Chunyu. They also knew that Xiao Chun had subdued Tianyue. Regarding this matter, Chunyu and his friends all prostrated themselves in admiration. He could even subdue the first holy maiden of ninth heaven. Xiao Qian's methods were indeed brilliant. The days were peaceful and fulfilling. However, this peace obviously could not last long. A month later, in a night ghost pavilion, Mo Xie, who had gone to the 18 ghost domains to train, finally returned from the 18 ghost domains. Although he looked very miserable after narrowly escaping death, Mo Xie's aura had become even more powerful. At the same time, the look in his eyes had become even sharper. At this moment, Mo Xie was like a venomous snake that no one dared to underestimate. Mo Xie's success in breaking through the 18 ghost domains caused a huge uproar in the Night Ghost Pavilion. At the same time, Mo Xie's reputation as the first holy son of the Night Ghost Pavilion was raised to the limit. In the entire history of the Night Ghost Pavilion, there were definitely not many people who had been able to break through the 18 ghost domains. Now that Mo Xie had done so, countless disciples of the Night Ghost Pavilion naturally admired him. First, the Blood Moon Great Sovereign personally summoned Mo Xie. Seeing that Mo Xie had changed a lot compared to before, the Blood Moon Great Sovereign smiled with satisfaction. Not bad. After narrowly escaping death, I've been reborn. The corners of Mo Xie's mouth curled into a cold smile when he heard the Blood Moon Great Sovereign's words. Yes, this time I won't be defeated again. Xiao Chun, Sacred Palace, just you wait. He had suffered a lot in the 18 ghost domains and had almost lost his life several times. However, Mo Xie had persevered time and time again in order to defeat Xiao Chun and avenge the resentment in his heart. Being defeated by Xiao Chun twice was really hard for the extremely proud Mo Xie to accept. That was why he insisted on breaking through the 18 levels of the Ghost Realm. Now, he had successfully broken through the 18 levels of the Ghost Realm. After only 3 days of recuperation, Mo Xie could not wait to take revenge. He wanted to take revenge on Xiao Chun and the Sacred Palace. He wanted to personally cut off Xiao Chen's head. The Night Ghost Pavilion began to stir again because of Mo Xie's return. Of course, Xiao Chun was unaware of all this, and the Sacred Palace had not received any news. However, the Sacred Palace did not slack off during this period of time. Not only were all kinds of talismans and pills being produced, but the teleportation formations were also completed one after another. Even the Sacred Palace, the Power King sect, the Supreme God sect, and 9 heavens had constructed teleportation formations between the 4 great sections. With so many cross-boundary teleportation formations, they formed a tight network. In this way, the Sacred Palace could provide immediate support in the event of an emergency. They did not need to use spaceships to travel back and forth, which took a long time. Xiao Chun naturally did not need to worry about the construction of the cross-boundary teleportation formations. Xiao Chun only needed to focus on his cultivation. Not only Xiao Chun, but Qin Shu, the 4 girls, Chun Ling, Long Qing, and all the Sacred Palace disciples were also cultivating with all their might. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1129. Inside the Sacred Palace, everyone was doing their best to improve their strength. In the outside world, the friction between the 2 alliances was constantly escalating. But for now, the overall situation was still under control. Although the people of the 2 alliances often fought, and there were often casualties, to put it bluntly, both sides had not shown their true abilities. They were just testing each other's strength. Some important resources, such as spirit veins, were fought over. Today, one side took the other's spirit veins, and the other side took them back the next day. Such small-scale battles happened almost every day in the North Star boundary. Of course, these things were actually irrelevant. What would really decide the outcome was the real battle that would break out after both sides had made their preparations. The victory or defeat at that time will be the most crucial factor that would determine the outcome. It was also because everyone was still in the preparation stage that the various holy sons, saints, and quasi-sages didn't make a move. At most, they only sent out some quasi-holy sons. For example, Guduya and Huangfu Ao had been sent to guard spirit veins and other places. They were locked in a fierce battle with a knight, Ghost Pavilion, and the other two sections. Guduya and Huangfu Ao had already entered the battlefield. Xiao Chen was not worried or envious because it was not the time for the chosen to enter the battlefield. Therefore, the most important thing was to seize this last opportunity to improve their strength. While Xiao Chen was still cultivating day after day, on an unknown continent, a jet-black starship slowly descended. On the hull of the starship, there were 3 large words, Night Ghost Pavilion. This unknown continent was so small that it couldn't even be called a continent. It was only the size of a region of the heavenly Qin continent. Moreover, there weren't any precious resources on this continent. The only thing special about this continent was that it was inhabited by humans. That was all. A continent with no meaning, no resources, and no experts had attracted the starship of the Night Ghost Pavilion. Moreover, the one leading the starship was the first chosen of the Night Ghost Pavilion, Emocia. The spaceship landed, and Emocia led a group of powerful cultivators from the Night Ghost Pavilion to the deck. Looking down at the barren land below, a holy son of the Night Ghost Pavilion standing beside, Emocia asked curiously, "Senior brother, what are we doing here?" Even the others did not know why Emocia had come to this continent. Hearing this, Emocia's eyes flashed with extreme killing intent. He said in a matter-of-fact tone, "It's nothing. I'm just giving Xiao Chen a small gift. Tell him that I, Emocia, am here." A small gift for Xiao Chen? They really didn't know what kind of gift there was on this barren continent. But soon, everyone knew. It was because Emocia had given the order to slaughter. He wanted the powerful cultivators of the Night Ghost Pavilion to raze the entire continent to the ground and kill every single human on the continent, not leaving a single one alive. Once the order to kill was given, the cultivators of the Night Ghost Pavilion did not hesitate, nor did they feel any pressure. To the Night Ghost Pavilion, massacring humans was no different from slaughtering chickens. Actually, the North Star realm was like this. Those who did not belong to the same race would definitely have a different heart. They would not show any mercy or pity when slaughtering other races. In an instant, this unknown continent turned into hell. Night Ghost Pavilion cultivators could be seen crazily slaughtering human cultivators everywhere. It didn't matter if they had a cultivation base, whether they were male or female, young or old. As long as they were seen, they would die. Shrill screams resounded across the entire continent, and news of the massacre quickly reached the ears of the sacred palace. They had slaughtered an entire continent. Although this continent was very small, there were at least 10 million humans living on it. 10 million lives had been taken just like that. Furthermore, after the massacre, Emocia wrote a message in the largest city on this continent. "Xiao Chen, this is a gift from this holy sun to you. Don't worry, as long as this holy sun is alive, I will kill every single human in the North Star realm." Emocia's message was also sent back to the sacred palace and into Xiao Chen's ears. In the dustless sacred palace's main hall, Xiao Chen sat on the main seat and listened to an elder's report. Xiao Chen's face was gloomy, and killing intent surged from his body as he shouted angrily, "Emocia, you want to play? Fine, I'll play with you. Men, do your best to find Emocia's whereabouts. I must kill this bastard with my own hands." Emocia's actions enraged Xiao Chen, the sacred palace, and the entire human race in the North Star realm. At the same time, the other races also paled at the mention of this bloody massacre. Massacring an entire continent wasn't something that had never happened in the history of the North Star realm. However, that was something that happened in the ancient times. At least in the past tens of thousands of years, such a massacre of an entire continent had never happened in the North Star realm. But now Emocia had done it. The various races cultivators who had been to the continent found it difficult to accept the scene in front of them when they arrived at the massacred continent. It was a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. It could be said that it was hell. No, hell might be better than this. Corpses were everywhere on the entire continent. No matter where one went, they would see corpses. The mountains, rivers, and lakes were dyed red with blood. The once prosperous continent was now lifeless. Unlike the other races, the Sacred Palace sent people to the continent as soon as they received the news. However, because the continent did not have a transboundary teleportation array, they could only take a starship. Xiao Chun led Qin Shi and the other girls, Chen Yu, the Qing Emperor, and another chosen by Yi, to the unknown continent. The Sacred Palace and many other human forces collected the corpses of those who had died unjustly on the continent and buried them. When Xiao Chun and the others arrived, they were stunned when they saw the hellish scene. In addition to the shock, an indescribable anger continued to rise in their hearts. They did not know these dead people, but they were of the same race and bloodline. From the day they were born, they shared the same name, the human race. Now, how could Xiao Chun and the others not be angry when they saw their own race being slaughtered like pigs and dogs by foreign races? Their eyes were red, and they could not hide the murderous intent in their eyes. Xiao Chun said coldly to an elder of the Wuchen sacred hall beside him, "Where is the nearest continent of the Ghost Clan?" Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1130. To the entire human race of the North Star world, this continent that didn't even have a name wasn't even worth mentioning, and the humans living on it were like a drop in the ocean compared to the entire human race. To put it bluntly, they wouldn't affect the human race of the North Star world in the slightest, but things clearly couldn't be viewed that way. These people were all living beings, and they were his own kind. Looking at the corpses that littered the entire continent, Xiao Chun only felt a stifling panic in his heart. In truth, Xiao Chun had already felt the same way back when Vast Peak City was massacred on the 100mo continent, but it was clear that the scene in Vast Peak City wasn't as shocking as the scene in front of him. The entire continent had been massacred. What kind of cruel method was this? After hearing Xiao Chun's cold shout, the dustless Sacred Hall elder beside him was stunned for a moment before he replied truthfully, reporting to the Chosen, "The nearest ghost continent is about 3 days away from here. It's called the Hua Gue continent." The Hua Gue continent. As the elder's voice fell, the Qing Emperor asked hesitantly, "Xiao Chun, you can't be thinking of..." The Qing Emperor had clearly guessed Xiao Chun's thoughts, and Xiao Chun didn't hide it. Before the Qing Emperor could finish, Xiao Chun interrupted him. "That's right, I'm going to massacre the Hua Gue continent. Since Mo Xie can massacre the human race, why can't I massacre the ghost race?" Mo Xie had massacred a continent of a human race, so Xiao Chun was going to massacre a continent of the ghost race. Upon hearing Xiao Chun's words, the surrounding Sacred Palace experts couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Massacring a continent wasn't as simple as killing a few people, but tens of millions or even hundreds of millions of lives. But when Xiao Chun said this, no one felt that he was joking and that he was really going to do it. Xiao Chun's decision shocked everyone. A moment later, Bai Yi said, "Senior brother Xiao, isn't massacring a continent a little too cruel?" Everyone felt that Xiao Chun's actions were a little cruel. Xiao Chun didn't immediately answer Bai Yi's question. He looked into the distance, and as far as his eyes could see, human cultivators were collecting corpses. The corpses were thrown into deep pits and buried. There were too many corpses, so it was naturally impossible to give everyone their own grave, so they had to bury them. After looking at the scene before him for a while, Xiao Chun said slowly, "That's right. When I was young, my wish was to become a powerhouse and stand above the heavens and earth. The heavens and earth are so big that I can go anywhere. For this wish, I have always been working hard. In the process of pursuing my dream, I slowly grew stronger. I grew from a young master of a small clan in the Eastern Sun region to the current first chosen of the Sacred Palace. My former enemies and friends have all been left far behind me. I grew stronger and stronger, but at the same time, I slowly realized that the responsibility on my shoulders grew heavier and heavier, not only for the Sacred Palace, but also because of my identity as a human. Humans have to shoulder responsibilities if they have the ability. In the North Star boundary, the human race is weak. During this period of time, I've been thinking about what I can do and what I want to do with my life. Now, I understand. Xiao Qin paused and then turned around. His gaze swept past Qinyu, the Qing Emperor, Bai Yi, and the others. Then, a look of determination burst out from his eyes as he said firmly, word by word, "As a human, I want to protect the human race. I want to protect all of the human race from foreign invasions. With the 3-foot-long sword in my hand, I want to protect the billions of lives of the human race. I vow to make the human race the strongest race in the world." Chen Yu and the others were stunned by Xiao Chen's words. Their blood was boiling because of what Xiao Chen had just said. Xiao Chen had grown up. As the first chosen of the sacred palace, Xiao Chen wanted to protect the human race and make the human race stronger. Although he didn't know if he could do it, he had to have a goal in life. Xiao Chen used to want to become an expert, but now Xiao Chen wanted to protect the entire human race. Just as Xiao Chen said, "With the 3-foot-long sword in my hand, I want to protect the billions of lives of the human race." Both were Xiao Chen's lifelong wishes. At the same time, they didn't conflict with each other. Because if he wanted to protect the human race, he naturally needed to have absolute strength. Because of Xiao Chen's words, everyone was stunned. After a long while, Chen Yu said, putting away his usual frivolous attitude. At this moment, Chen Yu looked at Xiao Chen with eyes full of shock and admiration. "With a 3-foot-long sword in my hand, I want to protect the billions of lives of the human race. Who? Senior brother is righteous. This junior brother is willing to follow you to the death." This was the first time Chen Yu had called Xiao Chen senior brother. Following Chen Yu's words, the Qing Emperor and Bai Yi beside him also said, "Senior brother is righteous. This junior brother is willing to follow you to the death." The Qing Emperor was a very proud person, but at this moment, he called Chen Yu senior brother from the bottom of his heart. The three chosen felt their blood boil because of Xiao Chen's words, let alone the others present. Many people's eyes were already red as they shouted with all their might, "Chosen one is righteous. We are willing to follow you to the death." Being born as a human meant to protect the human race, to make the human race stronger, to the point that no other race would dare to look down on us, to the point that no other race would dare to bully us, to the point that all the other races would bow down to us. Facing the cheers of the crowd, Xiao Chen's expression didn't change. If he wanted to achieve his goal, there was still a long way to go. However, Xiao Chen believed that one day, the human race would definitely stand at the top of this world, surpassing the 100 races, and truly become the strongest race in this world. It was just like the 100 races evaluation of the human race. The human race was born weak. They didn't have a terrifying bloodline power, nor did they have those innate divine abilities. It could be said that the human race was born as a blank piece of paper. They didn't know anything. Even if they were thrown into the wild, wild beasts could easily tear apart a human child. The human race was a race that had been forgotten by the heavens. This was the 100 races evaluation of a human race. But so what? The human race didn't bow down. They were born weak, but so what? With their own efforts, the human race still stood in this world and didn't go extinct. The human race was the most stubborn race. They struggled to survive in the muddy water in order to find their own place in this world. Wasn't such a weak but stubborn race worthy of respect? Xiao Chen was born as a human and was proud. It was also because of this pride in his heart that Xiao Chen wanted to make the human race stronger. For this, he wouldn't hesitate even if he had to sacrifice his entire life. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1131. The human race was born weak, and in this world where the strong preyed on the weak, they were undoubtedly a tempting piece of meat that every other race wanted to take a bite out of. However, under the bloody battles of the ancestors of the human race had been able to fend off one ferocious enemy after another, resolving the racial disparity time and time again. Now, as a member of the human race, Xiao Chen also wanted to do something for his own race. Although he did not know how far he could go, he wanted to give it a try. He wanted to avenge the people who had died unjustly on this continent. And at the same time, he wanted to tell the other races in the North Star world that the human race wasn't a pushover that anyone could bully at will. If you dare to slaughter my people, then I'll destroy your entire race. After forcefully suppressing his emotions, Xiao Chun looked at everyone present and said, "Get ready. We'll head to the Hua Gui continent immediately." In the beginning, everyone had objected to Xiao Chen's plan to slaughter the entire Hua Gui continent, but after hearing what he'd said earlier, no one dared to object anymore. Leading more than 100 Sacred Palace experts, Xiao Chun and the others headed for the Hua Gui continent on the same day. Amongst these 100-plus Sacred Palace experts, there were 5 Saint Venerables and over 10 half-Saint Elders. Coupled with the other Dao Emperor and Dao King Realm experts, it was absolutely easy for them to annihilate the Ghost View continent. After all, there weren't any powerful factions on the Hua Gui continent. There was only a single Saint sect with only a single Saint Realm expert. As a result, it wouldn't be difficult for Xiao Chen's group to destroy the Hua Gui continent. This time, it was purely for revenge. There was no other objective. Mo Xie had slaughtered a human continent, and Xiao Chun had slaughtered a ghost continent. The starship rose into the air and quickly charged into the endless starry sky. While Xiao Chen's group was heading toward the Hua Gui continent, Mo Xie was also sailing through the starry sky. He was currently sitting in the ship and drinking fine wine. Because he had slaughtered a continent of the human race, Mo Xie had been in a good mood during this period of time. He had a faint smile on his face. At the same time, the Night Ghost Pavilion chosen beside Mo Xie also smiled and said, "Senior brother Mo Xie, how do you think Xiao Chun is feeling right now? No matter how he feels, this is just a greeting gift. Soon, I'll make him beg for death." Mo Xie sneered. Massacring a human continent was just the beginning. Mo Xie still had follow-up actions to take. Mo Xie's starship was currently heading towards the direction of the Sky River continent. Mo Xie was still thinking about taking revenge on Xiao Chun, but he didn't expect Xiao Chen's revenge to come so quickly and suddenly. Of course, Mo Xie still didn't know that Xiao Chun was leading a group of people to the Hua Gui continent. They only needed 3 days to reach the Hua Gui continent. The starship shuttled through the endless starry sky. After 3 days, Xiao Chen's group finally landed on the Hua Gui continent. It was a small continent, but it was inhabited by ghost clan members. When Xiao Chen's starship slowly landed, it immediately attracted the attention of many ghost clan members. Of course, Xiao Chun had no intention of hiding. He came here to kill. He didn't have any other purpose, so there was no need for him to hide his whereabouts. The starship slowly descended with the words "Sacred Palace" emblazoned on its hull. The place where Xiao Chun and the others had landed was not far from a city. At that moment, many of the ghosts in the city had noticed them. Of course, when they saw the words "Sacred Palace" emblazoned on the hull of the starship, their expressions changed drastically. After a few days, the news that the first holy son of the Night Ghost Pavilion had massacred a human continent had spread throughout the North Star realm. The Hua Gui continent was only 3 days away from the massacred human continent, so they naturally heard the news. The Sacred Palace's starship suddenly landed on the Hua Gui continent at such a time. No one knew what this meant, but it was most likely nothing good. As the Sacred Palace's starship slowly landed, many ghost clan members in the city began to discuss. Sacred Palace, the sacred palace of a human race. What are they doing here? I don't know, but I have a feeling that it's not something good. Hurry up and inform the city lord. Soon, the city lord of the city also received the news and came to the city walls. He looked at the Sacred Palace starship that had landed safely outside the city. The city lord was only at the Dao King stage. He looked at the Sacred Palace starship with a grave expression and immediately shouted to the people beside him, "Hurry up and inform the Hua Gui sect." The Hua Gui sect was the only saint sect on the Hua Gui continent. Now that the Sacred Palace had descended, The Hua Gui sect was the only sect that could resist the sacred palace for a short period of time. The city lord kept praying in his heart. He hoped that the sacred palace's people weren't too strong and that the Hua Gui sect would be able to hold them off. As long as they could hold on until the night Ghost Pavilion's reinforcements arrived, they would be safe. However, the city lord's prayers were clearly useless. Xiao Qin's group soon arrived on the deck of the starship and looked at the city before them. With Xiao Qin's eyesight, he naturally saw the Ghost Clan cultivators on the city walls who were trembling in fear and constantly looking around. There was no trace of surprise in his eyes, only dense killing intent. In Xiao Qin's eyes, these Ghost Clan cultivators weren't worth pitying because they wouldn't pity the human race. It was the same principle. Slaughter the Hua Gui continent. I want not a single blade of grass to grow on the Hua Gui continent. Xiao Qin's voice was icy cold as he said indifferently. As soon as Xiao Qin finished speaking, the sacred palace experts soared into the sky and quickly spread out. The two Dao emperors also flew towards the city. Two Dao emperor enforcers were more than enough to destroy the city. As for the others, they naturally headed elsewhere. The city lord's expression changed when he saw the people from the sacred palace soar into the sky, especially when he saw Xiao Qin, Chen Yu, the Qing emperor, and Bai Yi dressed in the sacred palace chosen's robes. His face instantly turned ashen, but he quickly came back to his senses and turned to the many ghosts in the city and shouted at them. Let's go. Revenge. This is the sacred palace's revenge. They want to slaughter the entire Hua Gui continent. Damn it, run, run. The sacred palace is here for revenge. Run. Run as far as you can. Seeking collection, seeking monthly votes, seeking recommendations. Chapter 1132. Run. The sacred palace is here for revenge. The city lord roared angrily. He had been praying that the sacred palace wouldn't be too strong, but reality had undoubtedly given him a resounding slap to the face. Putting aside the 5 saint venerables and the dozen or so half-saint elders, just the appearance of Xiao Qin, Chen Yu, and the other chosens was enough to explain everything. Moreover, the fierce killing intent that soared into the sky from the sacred palace experts was even more chilling. Mo Xie had just massacred a human continent, and the sacred palace had descended on the Hua Gui continent a few days later. The city lord was no fool. How could he not know the sacred palace's objective? He had never imagined that the sacred palace's revenge would come so quickly and directly. However, even though the ghosts in the city had reacted as soon as possible, they were still finished. The two Dao Emperor Realm Overseers charged into the city and attacked without any explanation. Terrifying attacks rained down from the sky, and in an instant, the city was filled with miserable screams. On the city walls, the city lord watched as the ghosts in the city died in droves. Although the city wasn't a large one, and there were only 100,000 ghosts living in the city, this scene still shocked him greatly. The city lord roared in horror as he faced the hellish scene without holding back at all. Human race, sacred palace. How could you do such an infuriating thing? You actually massacred an entire city. You're simply demons. The city lord roared with bloodshot eyes as he watched the ghosts in his city being slaughtered and their miserable screams ringing out incessantly. However, as soon as he finished speaking, an indifferent voice sounded. Demons? I'm afraid you ghosts don't have the right to say that. Don't forget that your first chosen massacred an entire human continent. The city lord was stunned by the sudden voice. He quickly turned around and saw that Xiao Qin was already standing in front of him. Qin Shiru, Chen Yu, the Qing emperor, and Bai Yi were behind him. He didn't sense Xiao Qin's approach at all. After seeing Xiao Qin at such a close distance, he quickly recognized Xiao Qin's identity. As the first holy son of the sacred palace, Xiao Qin's appearance was no longer a secret in the North Star boundary. Many people of status had seen Xiao Qin's portrait before. The shocked expression on his face became even more horrified. He looked at Xiao Qin and said subconsciously, Xiao Qin, why are you here? The appearance of the sacred palaces first chosen on the tiny cafe Ghost Continent stunned the city lord. Xiao Chen didn't pay attention to the city lord's stunned expression. He smiled coldly and said, "I'm only here to give your ghost clan a gift in return. MOCS slaughtered a continent of my human clan, so I'll slaughter a continent of your ghost clan." Then, without waiting for the city lord to reply, Xiao Chun directly slapped out with his palm and killed the city lord with a single slap. With only a Dao King cultivation, the city lord naturally couldn't resist Xiao Chun at all. Xiao Chun killed the city lord with his own hands. He then looked at the city that was in ruins and said calmly, "Let's go to the Hua Gui sect." Xiao Chen's group rose into the air and headed straight for the Cathay Ghost sect. Of course, there were also 2 Sacred Palace Saint Sovereigns in addition to Xiao Chen's group. The Cathay Ghost sect was a saint sect. Although they only had 1 saint expert, they couldn't be careless. 2 Sacred Palace Saint Sovereigns were enough to kill a saint expert. As for the others, Xiao Chen's group naturally didn't fear them. Including Tian Yu and Xiao Chen's group, there were a total of 5 chosens. In addition, Qin Shiru and the other 2 girls weren't weak either. This force was enough to destroy the Cathay Ghost sect. The Sacred Palace's revenge came suddenly and caught everyone off guard. With the Sacred Palace's group attacking, terror frantically spread in all directions with the city as the center. Just like what Mo Xie and the others had done before, the Sacred Palace experts killed everyone they saw along the way. Regardless of whether they had cultivation or not, whether they were male or female, old or young, they were all killed on the spot. Blood gradually spread across the Cathay Ghost Continent. Miserable screams rose and fell, and the smell of blood in the air grew thicker and thicker. A few days ago, when they heard that the Ghost Clan's first holy son, Mo Xie, had massacred the human clan, they were all extremely excited and beaming with joy. However, who would have thought that they would encounter the same situation in just a few days? Only now did the ghost race personally experience the fear and helplessness of the human race being massacred. In the face of the merciless Sacred Palace experts, the ghost race had no ability to resist at all. The only thing they could do was wait for death to descend in terror. Cities were slaughtered one after another, and the ghosts were killed one after another, one after another. Fear spread like a plague. Soon, the Cathay Ghost sect in the east of the Cathay Ghost Continent finally received the news. At this moment, in the main hall of the Hua Gui sect, the sect leader of the Hua Gui sect, who was also the only saint in the Hua Gui sect, sat on the main seat. Below him, more than 10 elders of the Hua Gui sect stood trembling. Their faces were grave and filled with fear. The Cathay Ghost Sect Master had heard that the Sacred Palace had begun to massacre the ghost race. Nearly a third of the Cathay Ghost Continent had been turned into a wasteland, and all the ghost race living there had been killed. It had been less than a day since the Sacred Palace had arrived on the Cathay Ghost Continent. The Cathay Ghost Sect Master looked at the many elders below him and said in a deep voice, "The Sacred Palace is definitely here for revenge. What should we do? It will take time for the Night Ghost Pavilion's reinforcements to arrive. Sect Master, the only thing we can do now is to send the news back to the Night Ghost Pavilion and activate the Sect Protection Formation. We can only hope that we can hold on until the Night Ghost Pavilion's reinforcement arrive." An elder stepped forward and said, "The Cathay Ghost Sect wanted to deal with the Sacred Palace with their current strength. Therefore, the only thing they could do now was to hold on and wait for reinforcements. Even so, no one present had the slightest confidence that they could hold on until the Night Ghost Pavilion's reinforcements arrived. However, there was no other choice. This was the only choice and also the best choice." Hearing the elder's words, the sect leader of the Ghost Hua sect sighed with an ashen face. "That's all we can do. Damn it. How could the Sacred Palace's revenge come so quickly? Do they really dare to massacre the entire Cathay Ghost Continent? Aren't they afraid of being pointed at by the North Star Domain's 100 tribes and cursed by everyone? Massacring an entire continent was an extremely cruel thing to do. However, The ghost race was the one who did it first. The sacred palace was only taking revenge, so it was understandable. Moreover, would Xiaoqing care about being pointed at by the 100 tribes and cursed by everyone? Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. Chapter 1133. Condemned by 100 races and cursed by thousands? Would Xiaoqing care? Obviously not. Since the ghost race could massacre an entire continent, the human race could do the same. They would give them a taste of their own medicine. Everyone in the Ghost Hua sect was in a state of panic. The sect protecting formation had been activated, and the news had reached the Night Ghost Pavilion. When the Night Ghost Pavilion received the news that the Sacred Palace had descended on the Ghost Hua continent, the entire Night Ghost Pavilion was shocked. What was the Sacred Palace trying to do? This went without saying. But where did the Sacred Palace and the human race get the guts to massacre an entire continent of the ghost race? Damn it! Sacred Palace, Sacred Palace. How dare you massacre an entire continent of the ghost race? The human race is despicable. They actually attacked the ghost race who had no power to fight back. They deserve to die. They deserve to die. Many Night Ghost Pavilion disciples cursed angrily, but they had never thought about why the Sacred Palace and the human race would do this. Perhaps in the hearts of these Night Ghost Pavilion disciples, the human race was still the same weak race that they had been in the past. They were still the race that could only be beaten up without fighting back. However, they clearly did not expect that the situation was completely different now. The human race was no longer a race that could be bullied as they wished. Compared to the crazy curses of the ordinary disciples, the upper echelons of the Night Ghost Pavilion were much calmer. As the upper echelons of the Night Ghost Pavilion, they were not stupid and knew very well why the Sacred Palace had done this. It could be said that the Sacred Palace's actions this time were completely forced by the Night Ghost Pavilion. This was the bitter fruit of the Night Ghost Pavilion's own actions. Several saints of the Night Ghost Pavilion stood respectfully in front of Blood Moon Grand Venerable. Her beautiful face was expressionless as she asked the saints calmly. Blood Moon Grand Venerable didn't show any joy or sadness on her face. If we set off immediately, will we be able to save the Ghost Hua sect? As for the other places in the Ghost Hua continent, the Blood Moon Grand Sovereign knew that there was no way to save them. There was not enough time. However, the Ghost Hua sect had the sect protecting Grand Formation and could hold on for a while. Therefore, the Blood Moon Grand Sovereign's current goal was to save the Ghost Hua sect. However, after hearing her words, one of the saints hesitated for a moment before replying. I'm afraid that it will be very difficult. Even though the Ghost Hua sect has the sect protecting formation, the Sacred Palace is attacking in a towering rage, and the leader is the Sacred Palace's first chosen, Xiaoqing. I'm afraid that the Ghost Hua sect's sect protecting formation alone will not be able to stop the Sacred Palace. Furthermore, the Ghost Hua sect does not have a transboundary transportation formation from the Night Ghost Pavilion to the Ghost Hua sect. Even if we use the fastest starship, it will take at least 8 days to reach the Ghost Hua sect. By then, the Ghost Hua sect will have become a land of death. There was no way to save the Ghost Hua continent. Even the Ghost Hua sect would not be able to do anything. After hearing that the leader was the Sacred Palace's first chosen, Xiaoqing, a trace of emotion finally appeared on the Blood Moon Grand Sovereign's face. A trace of anger flashed across his eyes as he spoke through gritted teeth. Xiaoqing, it's that Xiaoqing again. Damn it, if this person is not eliminated, the Night Ghost Pavilion will not be able to eat or sleep in peace. There was no need to mention his hatred for Xiaoqing. Almost every time the Night Ghost Pavilion suffered, it was Xiaoqing who caused it. This time, Xiaoqing had led a team to destroy the Ghost Hua continent. This caused the Blood Moon Grand Sovereign's hatred to reach a peak. With a cold shout, the Blood Moon Grand Sovereign looked coldly at the Night Ghost Pavilion saints in front of him. Regardless of whether you can save them or not, you should all set off now. It was definitely too late to save them, but the Ghost Hua continent had been massacred. As a quasi-saint sect of the ghost race, the Night Ghost Pavilion naturally had to express their stance. Therefore, it was certain that they would send people over. To put it bluntly, sending these people over to the Ghost Hua continent was actually to deal with them, just like what the Sacred Palace had done. The Night Ghost Pavilion reacted immediately, but it was still too late. At this time, outside the Ghost Hua sect on the Ghost Hua continent, Xiao Chun and the others had already arrived. Standing in the air and looking at the Ghost Hua sect that was tightly protected by a formation, Xiao Chen's face was full of anger. At the same time, within the formation, the Ghost Hua sect master and a group of elders looked at Xiao Chun in the sky with unconcealable fear in their eyes. However, this was a matter of life and death, so the Ghost Hua sect master still braced himself and said to Xiao Chun, "Everyone from the Sacred Palace, aren't you afraid that you will be condemned by the 100 clans for massacring the ghost race that had no power to fight back? It's always the war between the two races, but you can't do such a cruel thing." He tried to use righteousness to pressure Xiao Chun, but after hearing his words, Xiao Chun laughed coldly. "What a joke. Do you ghost race members all have amnesia? Have you forgotten what the first holy son of your ghost race did a few days ago? Does that mean that only the officials are allowed to set fires and the common people are not allowed to light lamps?" 2 days ago, that little bastard Mo Siem massacred a continent of my human race. Today, I will massacre the entire Ghost Hua continent and bury the millions of innocent souls of my race. After speaking, without waiting for the Ghost Hua sect master to reply, Xiao Chun waved his hand. Chun Yu, Emperor Qing, Bai Yi, and the others all attacked the formation with all their strength. The Ghost Hua sect was not strong to begin with, so the sect protecting formation was naturally not outstanding. It was not even a saint-level formation, so it naturally could not stop Xiao Chun and the others. In just half a day, the Ghost Hua sect protecting formation was broken. Seeing that the formation was being destroyed, the Ghost Hua sect master's face was filled with fear. Without thinking, he immediately begged for mercy. "Holy Son Xiao Chun, the massacre of the human race 2 days ago had nothing to do with us. That was the Night Ghost Pavilion's doing. We are all innocent." "Innocent? Haha. Then what about the millions of innocent souls of the human race? Aren't they innocent? Since your ghost race has done this, don't blame me for returning the favor." With a thought, the dustless sword appeared in Xiao Chen's hand. With a slash, the Saint Level 9 sifting sword Qi was unleashed. As the sword slashed through the air, the Ghost Hua sect disciples below were instantly killed. Since Xiao Chun had made his move, Chun Yu and the others naturally followed suit. The two Sacred Palace Saints sovereigns immediately locked onto the Ghost Hua sect master. As the #1 sect of the Ghost Hua continent, the Ghost Hua sect was instantly reduced to a living hell. Blood splattered everywhere as miserable screams rang out endlessly. Besieged by the two Sacred Palace Saint sovereigns, the Ghost Hua sect master resisted with all his might. However, in the end, he was still no match for them. 2 hours later, the Ghost Hua sect master was killed. However, before he died, the Ghost Hua sect master used the last of his strength to shout out in anger. "Xiao Chun, Sacred Palace, the Night Ghost Pavilion will not let you off for committing such an inhumane act. Holy Son Mo Xia will not let you off either. One day, my ghost race will slaughter all the humans in the North Star world and make the human race extinct in the North Star world. Humph, as long as I, Xiao Chun, am around, nothing will happen to the humans in the North Star world." Xiao Chun coldly snorted when he heard the Ghost Hua sect master's words. With a slash of his sword, the sharp edge of the sword directly tore the Ghost Hua sect master's corpse into pieces. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 1134. With the death of the sect leader of the Ghost Flower sect, the remaining people were naturally no match for Xiao Chun and the others. Under the attack of the two saints, the Ghost Hua sect only lasted for a few hours before being razed to the ground. A sect without a saint overseeing it naturally couldn't withstand the attack of two saints. Moreover, in addition to the two saints, there was also Xiao Chun and the other four chosen, as well as Qin Shi and the other two girls. They didn't hold back in the slightest. Not a single person from the Ghost Hua sect was spared. The Ghost Hua sect that had dominated the Ghost Hua continent for over 1,000 years was destroyed in a single day, just like that. Everyone, from the sect master to the ordinary disciples, was killed. Following the destruction of the Ghost Hua sect, the Ghost Hua continent was littered with corpses. The remaining Sacred Palace experts turned the cities on the Ghost Hua continent into ghost cities and the land into a land of death wherever they passed. The Ghost Hua continent was littered with corpses, and miserable scenes could be seen everywhere. Qin Shi, Tianyu, and the other two girls didn't look too good when they saw the land. Even Xiao Chan didn't look too good. After all, these were the lives of millions of people. Anyone wouldn't feel good if they were killed just like that. One had to know that Xiao Chun and the others weren't homicidal maniacs. Xiao Chun had his reasons for doing this. Mo Xie had massacred an entire continent of humans. If the Sacred Palace didn't do anything, such things would definitely continue to happen in the future. Moreover, the distribution of forces among the various races in the North Star boundary could be said to be intricate and complicated. There were many continents where hundreds of races coexisted. As such, it was impossible for the Sacred Palace to protect the humans in the North Star boundary. They couldn't possibly arrange for experts to guard every continent, right? If that was the case, they could only be destroyed one by one. Therefore, Xiao Chun definitely wouldn't do such a stupid thing. Since they were unable to provide strict protection, they could only do the opposite. Didn't Mo Xie slaughter the human race of an entire continent? Then Xiao Chun would slaughter the ghost race of an entire continent, and use this as a pretext to send a message to the other quasi-sage sects in the North Star realm. The 7 quasi-saint sects could wage war against each other, but it was best not to target the ordinary people. Otherwise, if the ghost race could kill the human race could also slaughter the ghost race. In any case, everyone was on par with each other. This way, if Mo Xie wanted to slaughter the human race in the future, he would have to carefully consider whether his ghost race had enough people to fill the void. This was one of the most important reasons why Xiao Chun had massacred the Hua Gue continent. Once news of this spread, no matter who it was, they would have to think twice before attacking the human race in the future. Xiao Chen's group quickly left the Hua Gue continent, leaving behind a blood-soaked Hua Gue continent. At the same time, Xiao Chun also sent a message back to the Sacred Palace. He wanted Xiao Sheng and the others to publicly announce that the Hua Gue continent was the Sacred Palace's doing. His goal was very simple: to take revenge for the Night Ghost Pavilion and Mo Xie's previous actions. The news quickly reached the Sacred Palace and Xiao Sheng's group of 4. At this moment, Xiao Sheng, Bing Lian, Meng Jie, Randang, and the other patriarchs of the Sacred Palace were gathered together in Xiao Sheng's cave dwelling. Xiao Sheng told the 3 of them about the Hua Gue continent and explained Xiao Chen's intentions. Bing Lian was the first to express her support after hearing Xiao Sheng's words. I think Chun Er's method is very good. This will make others wary. Otherwise, if everyone wants to massacre the human race in the future, what will the human race become? A duck on the chopping block? Xiao Chen's method was very cruel. This was without a doubt, but as Bing Lian had said, it was a very good method. Using killing to stop killing would at least intimidate the world in the shortest amount of time. Meng Jie and Randang nodded in agreement after hearing Bing Lian's words. They both felt that Xiao Chen's method was good. Xiao Sheng smiled when he saw the 3 patriarchs nod in agreement. In that case, let's announce to the public as soon as possible that the Sacred Palace is behind the incident on the Hua Gue continent. Our goal is revenge. The 4 patriarchs were all old monsters who had lived for countless years. Although they had never massacred an entire continent, they weren't surprised. Moreover, Xiao Chun had killed the ghost race, so it wasn't a big deal. Moreover, the ghost race had also massacred millions of humans before this. The 4 patriarchs made their decision. The next day, the Sacred Palace announced to the public that the incident on the Hua Gue continent was the Sacred Palace's doing and that they had massacred millions of ghost race people in revenge for Emocia and the Night Ghost Pavilion's actions. In the end, the Sacred Palace unyieldingly stated that if any race dared to massacre the human race at will in the future, no matter who it was, the Sacred Palace would definitely take revenge. If they killed 10,000 people, the Sacred Palace would kill 20,000 of them. The Sacred Palace's announcement was very domineering. As the announcement quickly spread, the North Star boundary was instantly shaken. Needless to say, the human race didn't panic in the slightest in the face of the Sacred Palace's announcement. On the contrary, they were very excited. After all, the Sacred Palace's action was to protect the entire human race in the North Star boundary. Moreover, the human race had been in decline for many years. How could the human race not be overjoyed now that such a powerful quasi-saint sect had appeared in the human race? From the changes in the eyes of the surrounding cultivators, the human race in the North Star boundary could already feel the fear they felt towards the human race. In the North Star boundary, the human race used to be the weakest. Powerful races like the Ghost race and the Devil race looked down on the human race. But now, with the Sacred Palace's strength, these races no longer dared to bully the human race. Of course, there were pros and cons as well. With the emergence of this incident, the human race and ghost race could be said to be like fire and water. The ghost race, who were originally complacent because Emocia had slaughtered millions of humans, never thought that the human race would slaughter millions of ghost ancestors with a flip of the hand. The number of ghost ancestors was even more than the number of humans Emocia had slaughtered. Moreover, the one who did this was the current first chosen of the human race, Xiao Chun, who had the same status as Emocia. This was like a soldier against a soldier, a general against a general. It was obvious that the ghost race was taking revenge on Emocia. The human race was excited and proud, while the ghost race was filled with grief and indignation. But no matter what, the entire North Star boundary was shaken because of this incident. At the same time, the situation in the North Star boundary also turned from tense to chaotic because of this. On many continents, the human race and ghost race had already begun to fight, and both sides were almost irreconcilable. From the saint sects to the ordinary small clans, the human race and ghost race were already irreconcilable. As a result, the clouds of war in the sky above the North Star boundary were densely packed, begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 1135. The human race and ghost race began to fight fiercely in various parts of the North Star boundary. This was not an order from the Sacred Palace or the Night Ghost Pavilion. It was simply because the two races had decided to fight to the death. The first chosen of the Night Ghost Pavilion had massacred millions of human race members. Countless human race members hated him to the core. The first chosen of the Sacred Palace had retaliated even more ruthlessly. He had massacred millions of ghost race members, which was several times the number of human race members. As such, the ghost race viewed the human race as their mortal enemy. The two races hated each other. Naturally, a bloody war would break out. The Mingxiang continent was just a very ordinary continent in the North Star realm. On it, there were people from all kinds of major races, and they all lived here for generations. Originally, even though Mingxiang continent had always been a continent where the various clans lived together, it was still relatively peaceful. But now, that peace was gone forever because the human race and ghost race had started a war on Mingxiang continent. Both sides were led by major clans as they fought on the Mingxiang continent. Lake City was merely one of the most ordinary cities on the Mingxiang continent. At this very moment, there were no pedestrians in Lake City at all. Every household had shut their doors and refused to come out. Since yesterday, the two major clans in Lake City, the Chun clan and the Xie clan, had been in conflict. Lake City was basically ruled by the human race and the ghost race. The two major clans were the human race, and the Xie clan were the ghost race. As the two clans fought, the citizens of the various races in Lake City were naturally affected. After a night of fighting, the casualties of the two clans had reached close to 1,000. It was an extremely tragic scene. At this moment, the Chun clan patriarch and the core members of the Chun clan were gathered in the main hall of the Chun clan. Everyone was filled with killing intent. The Chun clan patriarch said coldly to everyone present, "In last night's battle, we were evenly matched with the Xie clan. Today, I have gathered everyone here for one thing. What do we do next? Do we fight to the end, or do we shake hands and make peace? That goes without saying. Of course, we will fight to the end. The Gue clan has slaughtered millions of our people. If it were not for Shao Chun, the sacred child, we would have lost millions of our people for nothing. Now, we must annihilate the Shui clan no matter what. In the future, there will be no Gue clan in whose city where there are humans." Hearing this, one of them stood out and shouted loudly, his tone extremely firm, "Shake hands and make peace." What a joke! Was it still possible for the human clan and ghost clan to shake hands and make peace? What a joke! As the voice of the Chun clan member sounded, the rest of the crowd also shouted, "That's right, let's fight to the end. Either the enemy dies or we die. How can the human race coexist with the ghost race? Fight, fight, fight!" Everyone cried out loudly. Hearing this, the head of the Chun clan, who was seated on the main seat, nodded his head heavily. He actually did not have any intention of shaking hands and making peace. The reason why he said this was because he wanted to see what everyone's opinion was. But from the looks of it now, none of them chose to back down. The Chun family head was very satisfied. The Chun clan chose to fight, and so did the Xie clan on the other side. Since both clans had made their decision, the battle in Lake City naturally became more intense. The two clans were engaged in a bloody battle almost all the time. Incidents like the one in Lake City could be seen everywhere in the North Star boundary. It could be said that the human clan and the ghost clan had completely fallen out. Compared to the various sects and clans below them, the quasi-sage sects appear to be very calm. The Night Ghost Pavilion had not made any statements about the Sacred Palace's declaration. On the other hand, Mo Xie, who was rushing to the Heavenly River continent, was sitting in a starship at this moment. He was stamping with rage and cursing constantly. Damn it, Shao Chun, you deserve to die, Mo Xie was originally feeling complacent about killing millions of humans, but who would have thought that Shao Chun would kill millions of ghosts in the blink of an eye? This made Mo Xie almost vomit blood. Perhaps in Mo Xie's subconscious mind, he did not think that Shao Chun would do such a cruel and tyrannical thing. After all, didn't the human clan like to pretend to be virtuous and sanctimonious? Everything was about right and wrong, about the virtue of the heavens. How could Shao Chun do such a thing? However, reality proved that Shao Chun clearly did not care about these things. Desperate times called for desperate measures. At this time, he would be a fool if he still insisted on doing things based on what was right and wrong. After receiving the news, Mo Xie did not know how many things he had smashed, but the anger in his heart still could not be vented. In Mo Xie's opinion, Shao Chun's action was a slap to his face, and it was a real slap. It made him lose face. Facing the furious Mo Xie, the Night Ghost Pavilion's holy sons and the group of experts beside him also had ugly expressions. They were also incomparably angry at Shao Chun's actions. After cursing for a while, Mo Xie was finally able to suppress the anger in his heart and calm himself down. However, his face was still gloomy, and his eyes were overflowing with killing intent. "All right, Shao Chun, if you want to play, I'll play with you. Accelerate at full speed. I want to slaughter the Heavenly River continent. If you slaughter the Huague continent, then I'll slaughter the Heavenly River continent. Let's see who will suffer more," Mo Xie thought to himself. However, just as he finished speaking, a Night Ghost Pavilion holy son hurriedly tried to persuade him. "Senior brother, you can't." Mo Xie wanted to slaughter the Heavenly River continent, and this holy son immediately tried to persuade him. Hearing this, Mo Xie turned his head and asked coldly, "What? You don't agree with my decision? Senior brother, calm down. Given the current situation, we can't attack ordinary humans. Otherwise, both our clans will suffer. Based on that bastard Xiao Qin's attitude, if senior brother dares to slaughter the heavenly river continent, then he definitely dares to slaughter the Heiyi continent. The Heiyi continent was where the Night Ghost Pavilion was located. It was also the center of the North Star Boundaries ghost race. Mo. Xie didn't respond to this disciple's words. At the same time, another holy son stepped forward. That's right, senior brother. If we start a war with the sacred palace, that's our business. It has nothing to do with the ordinary clansmen of our two clans. If we continue to massacre ordinary humans, then things will get out of hand. At that time, it will become a war between our two clans. If things really develop to that point, then no matter what the final result is, our two clans will be completely finished. You should know that the ghost race and the human race aren't the only ones in the North Star boundary. The war between the Sacred Palace and the Night Ghost Pavilion was a matter between the two quasi-sage sections. If the ordinary clansmen of the two clans were involved, then things would become troublesome. A war between the two clans wasn't something to joke about. The slightest carelessness could lead to the annihilation of one's entire clan. Annihilation was something that no clan wanted to face the most. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 1136. Xiao Qin's massacre of the Huaguo continent had indeed shaken the entire North Star boundary. At the same time, it was just as Xiao Qin had expected. After such a massacre, the Night Ghost Pavilion's actions had indeed become a little more cautious. The reason was very simple. Xiao Qin and the Sacred Palace's attitude was clear. Either you don't attack the ordinary humans, or we fight to the death. In any case, the Sacred Palace had no intention of doing so, nor did they have the ability to protect all the humans in the North Star boundary. Since that was the case, they would stop killing with killing. If they dared to kill one human, they would kill 10 ghost clansmen. If they dared to kill 10,000, they would kill 100,000, or even 1,000,000. It had to be said that Xiao Qin's madness had indeed left the Night Ghost Pavilion somewhat at a loss. Just like Mo Xie, when he received news that the Huaguo continent had been massacred, his first reaction was to massacre the Tiana continent to vent his anger. However, on second thought, as the other chosen of the Night Ghost Pavilion had said, as long as Mo Xie dared to attack the Tiana continent, Xiao Qin would definitely slaughter the entire Tiana continent. The main reason they were afraid was because Xiao Qin was so crazy and did not care about the consequences at all. As such, Mo Xie naturally could not die with him. Taking a deep breath, Mo Xie forcefully suppressed the anger in his heart. Just as he was about to say something to the chosen of the Night Ghost Pavilion, the latest order from the Night Ghost Pavilion arrived. This order was jointly issued by the three quasi-saint supreme sovereigns of the Night Ghost Pavilion. Even Mo Xie could not ignore the orders from the three supreme sovereigns. Therefore, he immediately checked the contents of the order. However, after reading it, Mo Xie's expression turned even uglier. His expression, which was already ugly to begin with, was now as dark as the bottom of a pot. Sensing the change in Mo Xie's expression, the chosen of the Night Ghost Pavilion asked curiously, "Senior brother, what's wrong? What order did the supreme sovereigns send?" The chosen were also curious about the order that could make Mo Xie's expression turn so ugly. Hearing this, Mo Xie casually tossed the voice transmission talisman in his hand to them and said coldly, "Take a look for yourselves." After receiving the voice transmission talisman from Mo Xie, the chosens gathered together to check it. But after a short while, their faces changed and they were all stunned. He didn't expect the three supreme sovereigns to make such a decision. After being stunned for a moment, one of the holy sons said in shock, "Senior brother, how can we not carry out the orders issued by three venerables at the same time? Let's cut the crap and get ready to fight the Sacred Palace head-on this time." Since the three supreme venerates had already made their decision, The only thing Mo Xie could do was to obey unconditionally. Hearing Mo Xie's words, the Chosens nodded helplessly. This sudden order was actually very simple. The three great sovereigns had decided to stop Mo Xie and the others from attacking the Sky River continent. The reason was very simple. The Night Ghost Pavilion was also afraid of Shao Chun and the Sacred Palace's revenge. If Mo Xie and the others attacked the Sky River continent and massacred the entire Sky River continent, Shao Chun and the Sacred Palace would definitely retaliate by doing the same. The Night Ghost Pavilion also did not have the ability to guarantee the safety of the North Star Boundaries ghost race. As a result, everyone would fall into a state of mutual slaughter. This was not something the Night Ghost Pavilion wanted to see. Therefore, the three great sovereigns of the Night Ghost Pavilion told Mo Xie and the others to change their plan. They did not want to go to the Sky River continent, but to go to the Blood Demon continent, which was not far from the Sky River continent. The Blood Demon continent was once inhabited by demonic cultivators. However, demonic cultivators no longer existed because the Sacred Palace had destroyed them. Therefore, the Blood Demon continent was now a continent with no humans living there. The Night Ghost Pavilion's plan was very simple. They wanted to fight the Sacred Palace with real swords and spears on the Blood Demon continent. Since they were afraid of the Sacred Palace's cruel revenge, the Night Ghost Pavilion would not attack ordinary humans. Instead, they would target the Sacred Palace. They would let Mo Xie and the others go to the Blood Demon continent first. At the same time, the Night Ghost Pavilion would continue to send reinforcements. This time, all the Chosen of the Night Ghost Pavilion had gathered. They wanted to launch the first strike of this earth-shattering war with the Sacred Palace. Although the various quasi-sage sects had been at loggerheads with each other during this period of time, a true war had yet to break out. This time, the three great sovereigns of the Night Ghost Pavilion had undoubtedly made preparations for an all-out war with the Sacred Palace. Disregarding everything else, just the fact that all the Chosen of the Night Ghost Pavilion had gathered together was enough to show the importance the Night Ghost Pavilion placed on this war. One had to know that the status of any quasi-sage sects chosen was not to be underestimated. They were even more important than saints. It was already impressive enough for the Night Ghost Pavilion to send out a single chosen in a normal battle. However, the Night Ghost Pavilion had sent out all of its chosen and saintesses. If the Sacred Palace accepted the challenge, they would have to send out Shao Chun and the other chosen and saintesses as well. A battle of this scale had not been seen in the North Star Boundary for tens of thousands of years. Of course, the order didn't say whether the three great venerables would personally take action or not. Presumably, this would depend on the situation. But no matter what, even if the great venerables didn't personally take action, the holy sons and holy daughters of both sides taking action was already enough to attract the attention of everyone. Of course, the Sacred Palace was still unaware of all this. Moreover, the Night Ghost Pavilion did not plan to use any tricks in this war. Everything would depend on strength. On the starship, the Chosen of the Night Ghost Pavilion were all stunned when they heard Mo Xie's words. At the same time, Mo Xie suddenly smiled when he saw that they did not move. Since the three great sovereigns have decided to declare war on the Sacred Palace, there is no need for us to hold back anymore. Moreover, I have long wanted to see the Sacred Palace's chosen. I want everyone to know that the Chosen of the Night Ghost Pavilion is not something the Sacred Palace's chosen can compare to. All of you should quickly go and prepare. Once Gu Chang'e and the others arrive, we will head straight to the Blood Demon continent. Mo Xie was indeed the first chosen of the Night Ghost Pavilion. Although he was a little sinister, there were not many problems with him in other aspects. He quickly calmed down. Moreover, because of his words, the Chosen of the Night Ghost Pavilion were filled with fighting spirit. That's right, it was only because the three Supreme Sovereigns' orders were too sudden that they hadn't been able to react in time. Now that they heard Mo Xie's words, the fighting spirit in their hearts was completely ignited. The 10 chosen and chosen of the Sacred Palace finally had a chance to compete with them. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. In a chapter. Chapter 1137. The three great sovereigns of the night, Ghost Pavilion, had decided to declare war on the Sacred Palace at the same time. This was obviously much earlier than the Sacred Palace had expected. Although the two sides were at daggers drawn, it wasn't easy to prepare for a huge battle. Originally, both sides thought that it would take at least a few years for such a huge battle to break out. But now, the Night Ghost Pavilion could no longer wait. Xiao Qin's massacre of the ghost race had forced the Night Ghost Pavilion to bare its fangs and declare war on the Sacred Palace. This battle wasn't just a small skirmish like before. This was the first real battle between the two great quasi-sage sections. The significance of this battle was no longer as simple as victory or defeat. It could be said that once this battle broke out, the situation in the North Star boundary would completely change. The seven great quasi-sage sects and the two great alliances would very likely break off completely because of this battle. The clouds of suspicion that had been lingering in the air above the North Star boundary would also be completely ignited. It could be said that besides the outcome of this battle, it was also the main culprit that would tear off the seven great quasi-sage sects of the North Star boundary. Perhaps it was because they knew the significance of this battle that the Chosen of the Night Ghost Pavilion had been so shocked when they received the Great Sovereign's orders. They hadn't expected the Great Sovereigns to make such a decision. But no matter what, this battle was unavoidable because the Night Ghost Pavilion's declaration of war was already on its way to the Sacred Palace. For the time being, they didn't know that the Night Ghost Pavilion had already made preparations for war. After massacring the Hua Gue continent, Xiao Chun ignored the shock of the various forces in the North Star boundary and returned to the Sacred Palace with his people. This trip wasn't a good memory for Xiao Chun. After all, so many people from the human race had died. The tragic scene was still fresh in Xiao Chen's mind. After returning to the Sacred Palace, the Night Ghost Pavilion chose to remain silent on this matter. They didn't express any stance on Xiao Chen's massacre of the Hua Gue continent. Xiao Chen didn't think that the Night Ghost Pavilion had given in. In the cave, Xiao Chun, who had returned for a few days, was sitting in the courtyard with Chun Ling and Long Qing, discussing the current situation. Chun Ling calmly looked at Xiao Chun and said, "Third brother, the Night Ghost Pavilion has gone silent. What do you think?" Millions of ghosts had died at the hands of humans, but the Night Ghost Pavilion hadn't said anything. This was strange. After hearing Chun Ling's words, Xiao Chun took a sip of tea. This is not good news. Massacring the entire Hua Gue continent would not scare the Night Ghost Pavilion. On the contrary, it would only anger them. Therefore, I believe that the Night Ghost Pavilion is making an important decision. Xiao Qin was not so naive as to think that the Night Ghost Pavilion's silence was a sign of weakness. In fact, this silence was more like the calm before the storm. Chunling completely agreed with Xiao Qin's idea. Just as he finished speaking, a holy venerate walked in and quickly arrived before the three of them. He did not care about anything else and spoke bluntly. "The Patriarch has summoned us to the Sacred Hall for a meeting." Xiao Sheng and the others had summoned all the holy venerates, chosens, and saintesses to the Sacred Hall for a meeting. When they heard the holy venerates' words, Xiao Chun and the others looked at each other and saw some clues in each other's eyes. However, they didn't say anything and followed the holy venerate to the Sacred Hall. They didn't encounter any delays along the way. When Xiao Chun and the others arrived at the Sacred Hall, there were already dozens of people gathered inside. After finding their seats, the holy venerates of the Sacred Palace, as well as the 10 chosens and saintesses, were all present. It was at this moment that Xiao Sheng, Randang, Bing Lian, Meng Jie, and the other patriarchs appeared on the main stage. When the 4 patriarchs appeared, everyone bowed. When he saw this, Xiao Sheng waved his hand and gestured for everyone to take a seat. Then, he spoke in an indifferent voice. Just now, the Night Ghost Pavilion announced that all forces in the North Star field had declared war on the Sacred Palace. They also stated that the first battle will take place on the Blood Demon continent. Although Xiao Sheng's voice was calm, it was like a clap of thunder in everyone's ears. The Night Ghost Pavilion had declared war on the Sacred Palace. Everyone present was stunned. Although they knew that the Sacred Palace and the Night Ghost Pavilion would fight, they didn't expect it to come so soon. The Sacred Palace had originally planned to wait until they were fully prepared before declaring war on the Night Ghost Pavilion. But now that the Night Ghost Pavilion had made the first move, the Sacred Palace naturally had to respond. Everyone's eyes darted around, clearly pondering and weighing the pros and cons in their hearts. When he saw this, Xiao Sheng looked at Xiao Chun and asked, "First, Holy Venerate, the Holy Venerate, how do you think the Sacred Palace should respond to the Night Ghost Pavilion's declaration of war?" When he heard this, Xiao Chun stood up and replied, "Ancestor, there is nothing to worry about. Since the Night Ghost Pavilion has already declared war, the Sacred Palace has no choice but to accept the challenge." Although it wasn't the best time to declare war, since the Sacred Palace wasn't fully prepared for this battle, the Night Ghost Pavilion was the same. Since the Night Ghost Pavilion had chosen to declare war now, it was likely that they had no choice but to do so. Since that was the case, the Sacred Palace naturally had no reason to run away. Furthermore, since the Night Ghost Pavilion had already declared war, no matter how the Sacred Palace responded, the Night Ghost Pavilion would definitely not back down. One had to know that a war between two quasi-Saint Venerate sects wasn't as simple as a fight between two people. Since the Night Ghost Pavilion had declared war on the Sacred Palace, there was no way they were bluffing. There had to be a battle. If a quasi-Saint sect went back on its word after declaring war, it would be akin to slapping itself in the face. In the future, the Sacred Palace would no longer have any face in the North Star field. Therefore, the Sacred Palace had no choice but to accept the Night Ghost Pavilion's declaration of war. Following Xiao Chen's words, the rest of the crowd also stood up and spoke. Senior Brother Xiao is right. Since the Night Ghost Pavilion has already declared war, why should the Sacred Palace be afraid? We should accept the challenge, said the Sixth Holy Son, Bai Yi. That's right. Even though the war has started much earlier than we expected, the arrow is already knocked on the bow. We have no choice but to release it. Ancestor, please understand, said the Ninth Holy Daughter, Yun Chuan. That's right. Why should the Sacred Palace be afraid of this battle? Let's fight, said the various holy venerates. Everyone was in favor of accepting the challenge. Seeing this, Xiao Sheng and the other three nodded slightly. Then, Xiao Sheng said, "I understand your intentions. I understand everyone's intentions. Since that's the case, let's fight. This is the battle where the Holy Palace will truly rise. If we win, the Holy Palace will truly be able to gain a firm foothold in the North Star field and stand on equal footing with the other quasi-sage sections. The original disadvantage of lacking a foundation will also no longer exist. This is the letter of challenge sent by the Night Ghost Pavilion, begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." End of chapter. Chapter 1138. The Night Ghost Pavilion had openly declared war on the Sacred Palace without resorting to any underhanded means. Because of this, the Sacred Palace had no reason to reject the Night Ghost Pavilion's declaration of war. This was the same logic as if the Night Ghost Pavilion had declared war but not declared war. Since war had been declared, if the Sacred Palace did not dare to accept the challenge, the Sacred Palace's prestige would be swept to the ground. The entire human race of the North Star boundary would find it difficult to raise their heads again. The Night Ghost Pavilion's declaration of war was passed around for everyone to read. In truth, there wasn't much substance in the declaration of war. Apart from a declaration of war, it was nothing more than a few harsh words. The only thing that surprised everyone was that the Night Ghost Pavilion had actually sent out all of its chosens and saintesses. From the looks of it, it really did seem like they were going to fight the Sacred Palace head-on. The Sacred Palace quickly made the decision to send out all of its chosens and saintesses. Xiao Chun and the other Chosens and Saintesses would all be mobilized. Of course, it wasn't just Xiao Chun and the others. The disciples, deacons, elders, and holy sovereigns would also participate. The sacred palace wasn't afraid of this battle, but they wouldn't underestimate the Night Ghost Pavilion either. As a quasi-saint sect that had stood tall in the North Star boundary for countless years, the Night Ghost Pavilion's strength was unquestionable. After confirming all of this, the Nine Heavens Saint asked Xiao Chun and the others, "Ancestor, now that we've declared war on the Night Ghost Pavilion, will Nine Heavens and the others help us?" The Nine Heaven Saints' question was obviously a question that everyone was extremely concerned about. After all, the Sacred Palace was currently allied with Nine Heavens, the Taishin sect, and the Liwang sect. Since the Sacred Palace and the Night Ghost Pavilion had declared war on the Sacred Palace, would they help? Xiao Sheng said indifferently, "We can only rely on ourselves for this battle. Nine Heavens and the others will only be responsible for stopping the Myriad Beast Valley and the Demonic Sky Hall. Nine Heavens and the other two quasi-saint sects wouldn't help them. They would only be responsible for stopping the Myriad Beast Valley and the Demonic Sky Hall." Everyone nodded slightly and fell silent. Everyone could guess the reason why Nine Heavens and the other two did not make a move. First of all, this was the first battle between the Sacred Palace and the Night Ghost Pavilion. Both sides could be said to be probing each other and would not go all out from the start. This was not difficult to see from the expressions of the quasi-saint supreme sovereigns on both sides. Whether it was Xiao Sheng's group of 4 or Blood Moon's group of 3 from the Night Ghost Pavilion, none of them had any intention of taking action. Moreover, this battle was also the first time the Sacred Palace had truly displayed its strength in the North Star world, so it was understandable that the Nine Heavens and the other two parties did not participate. After all, the Sacred Palace had only risen to prominence for a short period of time, so it was hard to say just how strong they were. Therefore, this was a battle for the Sacred Palace to display their strength. If they could win this battle well, the three quasi-saint sects would truly accept the Sacred Palace. On the other hand, if the Sacred Palace collapsed in this battle, then the Sacred Palace would be nothing more than a paper tiger in the eyes of the three quasi-saint sections. At that time, Nine Heavens and the other two parties might have to reconsider whether they should continue to ally with the Sacred Palace or reconsider the division of benefits. To put it bluntly, this battle was not only the Night Ghost Pavilion's test to the Sacred Palace, but also all the forces in the North Star world's test to the Sacred Palace. In this battle, whether or not the Sacred Palace had the qualifications to stand on equal footing with the other 6 quasi-saint sects would be most directly displayed. After a round of discussion in the Sacred Palace, Xiao Sheng and the other patriarchs finally decided to set off for the Blood Demon Continent in 3 days. The Sacred Palace's 10 chosen and saintesses would all participate in this battle. At the same time, the Sacred Sovereign would also send 15 people along with tens of thousands of disciples, attendants, and elders. After settling the matter, Xiao Chun and the others left the Sacred Palace and returned with Chun Ling, Long Qing, and the others. Along the way, the group split up. With the impending battle, the chosen and saintesses clearly had many things to prepare. They returned to the main peak of the dustless Sacred Palace alone. Just as Xiao Chun returned to his cave dwelling, Qin Shiru and the others hurriedly found Xiao Chun. Seeing that the 4 women's expressions were not too good, Xiao Chun asked with a smile, "What's wrong? You all look so flustered. Did something happen?" Upon hearing Xiao Chen's words, Qin Shiru was the first to ask without beating around the bush, "Is the Sacred Palace about to declare war on the Night Ghost Pavilion?" The 4 women actually knew that the Night Ghost Pavilion had declared war on the Sacred Palace. Xiao Chun was slightly taken aback. He had just returned from the Sacred Palace, but the 4 women had already received the news. For a moment, he was confused, but when he saw Tianyu, Xiao Chun quickly understood. As the number 1 saintess of 9 heavens, Tian, you must have received the news from 9 heavens. In response to Qin Shiru's question, Xiao Chun did not hide anything and nodded slightly in acknowledgement. However, Hunter Flower Fairy suddenly spoke. Husband, the supreme sovereign of 9 heavens has sent news that Tianyu is to return to 9 heavens immediately. 9 heavens had ordered Tianyu to return immediately. Xiao Chen looked at Tianyu, and at the same time, Tianyu met Xiao Chen's eyes with a complicated expression. Tianyu did not want to leave Xiao Chen, but she could not disobey 9 heavens' orders. Xiao Chen had already guessed that 9 heavens would send Tianyu back, but he did not expect it to be so soon. Xiao Chen had already guessed that 9 heavens wouldn't allow Tianyu to stay by his side. At least before the end of this battle, 9 heavens wouldn't allow Tianyu to return to the sacred palace. Moreover, it was not an exaggeration to say that if the sacred palace lost this battle, 9 heavens might not allow him to interact with Tianyu in the future. After all, if the sacred palace was too weak, 9 heavens would not need to pay attention to them at all. To put it bluntly, this battle was a display of the sacred palace's strength, a battle that the other quasi-saint sects would pay attention to. Xiao Chen sighed softly. He could not blame 9 heavens for doing this, because if the positions of the sacred palace and 9 heavens were switched, the sacred palace would probably do the same. After all, although the sacred palace was now famous, this was the first time they had clashed with a quasi-saint sect. No one knew if the sacred palace had the capital to stand on equal footing with the other 6 quasi-saint sections. Xiao Chen got up and came to Tianyu's side. He smiled and said, "Don't worry, I will personally go to 9 heavens to find you after this battle." Xiao Chen knew what 9 heavens meant, and so did Tianyu. He did not make things difficult for her, because Xiao Chen knew that Tianyu would not participate in this battle. Therefore, Xiao Chen chose to let Tianyu return to 9 heavens. Of course, after this battle, Xiao Chen would definitely go to 9 heavens personally and completely resolve the matter between him and Tianyu. At the very least, he would not let 9 heavens stop him from being with Tianyu. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. In a chapter, Chapter 1139. He didn't stop Tianyu from leaving. Although Xiao Chen was confident that Tianyu would stay no matter how difficult it was, Xiao Chen also knew that Tianyu would be put in a difficult position if he did so. Moreover, even if he forced Tianyu to stay by his side, what could he do? The final outcome would still depend on the outcome of this battle. If the sacred palace didn't display enough strength in this battle, 9 heavens would still forcibly take Tianyu away. Tianyu had a complicated expression when she heard Xiao Chen's words. But Tianyu didn't want to leave, especially at a time like this. Facing Tianyu's dilemma, Xiao Chen smiled and said, "Don't worry, I will return to 9 heavens after this battle. I will go back with you and settle our matters." Although Xiao Chen and Tianyu had confirmed their relationship, 9 heavens and Tianyu's family didn't acknowledge it. Of course, the sacred palace didn't acknowledge their relationship either, which was why Xiao Chen allowed Tianyu to return to 9 heavens. Tianyu was extremely unwilling, but under Xiao Chen's persuasion and unyielding attitude, she ultimately chose to return to 9 heavens. This was naturally also because Tianyu trusted Xiao Chen and believed that he would come to 9 heavens to look for her. After personally sending Tianyu away, the sacred palace, 9 heavens, Supreme God sect, and Li Wang sect had built inter-realm transmission matrices with each other. Therefore, it was very convenient for them to travel back and forth. They no longer needed to take spaceships like before. After personally sending Tianyu into the transmission matrices and watching her disappear, Gu Lingyao asked in disappointment on the way back to the cave residence, "Is big brother Xiao Chen sad that big sister Tianyu is gone?" Among the 4 girls, Tianyu had the best relationship with Gu Lingyao. Both of them had lively personalities and naturally got along well with each other. After hearing Gu Lingyao's words, Xiao Chen lovingly rubbed her head and smiled. "Don't worry, I will bring her back soon. When the time comes, no one will be able to stop us." Besides, at this point, Xiao Chen looked at Qin Shiru and Flower Fairy and paused for a moment before continuing. "Also, I want to give you a grand wedding. This is what I've always owed you." Xiao Chen had only held a true wedding with Qin Shiru before. However, the scale of that wedding had been too small. It had always been Xiao Chen's wish to give the four girls a proper wedding. Now that the sacred palace was on the rise, and they had won the first battle against the Night Ghost Pavilion, Xiao Chen's status would be enough to hold an unprecedented wedding. After hearing Xiao Chen's words, Qin Shu, Flower Fairy, and Gu Lingyao were all touched. As women, how could they not want such a wedding? Unfortunately, they had been unable to truly settle down, so this matter had been delayed time and time again. In addition to the current situation, even though the three girls had always hoped for such a wedding, they had never said it out loud, nor did they want to add any pressure to Xiao Chen. As the first chosen of the sacred palace, Xiao Chen's shoulders were not only burdened by the three of them, but also the entire sacred palace and even the entire human race of the North Star boundary. Xiao Chen laughed heartily when he saw how touched the three women were. They were all holding back their tears and not saying a word. He pulled the three women into his arms, and the four of them walked toward the Wuchen temple together. Xiao Chen wanted to give the four girls an explanation, but now was not the time to think about it. In the next 2 days, Xiao Chen arranged the affairs of the Wuchen Sacred Hall and selected 5,000 of the most elite disciples, deacons, and elders of the Wuchen Sacred Hall. These people were going to go to the Blood Demon continent to participate in the Great War. The Sacred Palace had 10 great sacred halls, and each sacred hall would send 5,000 people to participate in this battle. The 10 great sacred halls would send a total of 50,000 people. Although the number did not seem large, they were definitely the best of the best. Over the next 2 days, the 10 great sacred halls of the Sacred Palace were actively making preparations. At the same time, various talismans and pills needed for the battle were continuously transported onto the starships. On the 3rd day, it was time for everyone to set off. 50,000 disciples, deacons, and elders gathered in the square of the Sacred Palace, led by Xiao Chun and the other sons and daughters of the Sacred Palace. Behind them, there were more than a dozen Saint Venerables. Such a lineup was indeed terrifying. In the North Star boundary, such a force could not be compared to any other continent or force except for the Quasi-Saint sect. With the battle imminent, everyone's eyes flashed with a strong fighting spirit. At the same time, Xiao Sheng and the other 3 patriarchs also personally appeared before the departure. Without any superfluous words, the 4 patriarchs said in a deep voice, "This battle will be the first real battle since the establishment of the Sacred Palace. Victory or defeat will determine life and death, so there is nothing more to say. Everyone, give it your all. I believe that the Sacred Palace will win this battle." Hearing Xiao Sheng and the other 4 patriarchs' words, everyone shouted in unison, "Victory! Victory!" The Sacred Palace accepted the Night Ghost Pavilion's declaration of war. 3 days later, the Sacred Palace army set off from the Tianshan continent and headed straight for the Blood Demon continent. The Sacred Palace had no intention of hiding their actions. Therefore, the various clans and major forces in the North Star boundary received the news as soon as possible. The first battle between the Sacred Palace and the Night Ghost Pavilion was naturally the focus of everyone's attention. This was the first real battle between the North Star boundary's Quasi-Saint sects in tens of thousands of years. On the surface, the North Star boundary had been at peace for tens of thousands of years, but at this moment, the last piece of cloth was finally removed. The 2 great Quasi-Saint sects were about to start a real battle on the Blood Demon continent. Everyone was not only paying attention to the Sacred Palace's movements, but also to the Night Ghost Pavilions. There is already news that the Night Ghost Pavilion's chosens and saintesses had also gathered. Although the Night Ghost Pavilion did not have as many chosens and saintesses as the Sacred Palace, only 6, the Night Ghost Pavilion's chosens and saintesses have been famous for a long time. In terms of strength and reputation, the chosens and saintesses of the Sacred Palace could not compare to them. Although the Sacred Palace's 10 chosens and saintesses were well known, the only one who was truly accepted by the world was Xiao Chun. After all, in the past few years, Xiao Chun had done several sensational things as the first chosen of the Sacred Palace. In particular, his recent massacre of the Huague continent was still fresh in everyone's minds. However, other than Xiao Chun, the other chosens and saintesses of the sacred palace paled in comparison. Many people had never even seen the chosens and saintesses of the sacred palace and had never even heard of their deeds. Therefore, because of the disparity in reputation between the chosens and saintesses of the Night Ghost Pavilion, most people believed that even though the Night Ghost Pavilion only had 6 chosens and saintesses, the outcome of the battle was still uncertain. Whether the sacred palace could win this battle was still a big question mark. Please add this to your collection. Monthly vote recommended. End of chapter. Chapter 1140. The 2 quasi-saint sects were hurrying towards the Blood Demon continent. The Night Ghost Pavilion had also sent out more than 50,000 elite disciples and a dozen saints for this battle. The battlefield was set to be on the deserted Blood Demon continent. No one lived there, so everyone could fight without any qualms. While both sides were rushing towards the Blood Demon continent, the members of the various large sects were already hiding in the surroundings of the Blood Demon continent. It was natural for the various large sects to send people to investigate such an unprecedented battle. Of course, they couldn't get involved in the battle. They could only watch from afar to ensure that the results of the battle could be transmitted back as soon as possible. The Sacred Palace and Night Ghost Pavilion obviously had no intention of paying attention to the spies sent by the various large sects and families. This kind of situation wasn't uncommon on the battlefield. It was normal for various forces to send out spies to investigate the results of the battle. As long as it didn't take long, there was no need to pay attention to them. Of course, the various large sects were very particular about the spies they sent out. Most of them weren't saints and were half-saints at most. This kind of strength wasn't enough to affect the outcome of the battle, so there was no need to pay attention to them. The entire North Star Boundary's attention was focused on the Blood Demon continent. Everyone was waiting for the main characters, the Sacred Palace and Night Ghost Pavilion, to arrive. After 5 days of waiting, the Sacred Palace and Night Ghost Pavilion finally arrived. The Night Ghost Pavilion was the first to arrive. 20 giant spaceships broke through the clouds and slowly landed on the Blood Demon continent. At the same time, the experts of the Night Ghost Pavilion arrived on the deck. There were tens of thousands of them. The 20 spaceships were extremely large. Each one was several thousand meters long and over 100 meters tall. On the deck of the leading starship, Misty stood at the forefront. Beside him were 5 young men and women dressed in the Night Ghost Pavilion's holy disciple robes. Needless to say, these 5 people were the chosen and saintesses of the Night Ghost Pavilion, including Misty. The Night Ghost Pavilion's 6 chosen and saintesses were indeed participating in this battle. Because the Sacred Palace had yet to appear, the spies of the various large sects didn't make any moves. They simply hid in the distance and waited quietly while secretly observing the Night Ghost Pavilion. Although it was said to be an observation, most of their gazes were naturally on Misty and the other holy sons and holy daughters. Misty went without saying. Someone had already begun to speak Shaoxiang. Misty, Haozong, Yanxiang, Xinggang, Guchengel, Fujin, the 6 holy sons and holy daughters of the Night Ghost Pavilion are all here. Misty was the first holy son of the Night Ghost Pavilion. He and Xiao Chun were old rivals. Standing on Misty's left was a young man with a dark yellow complexion. He looked very different from the other ghosts. His name was Haozong, and he was the second holy son of the Night Ghost Pavilion. His power was second only to Misty. 2 young men stood beside Haozong. One of them was very tall, while the other was very short. Their names were Yanxiang and Xinggang. They were the 3rd and 4th holy sons of the Night Ghost Pavilion. Haozong and the other 2 were to Misty's left, while Guchengel, the 5th holy daughter of the Night Ghost Pavilion, sat in the first position on Misty's right. Xiaochen had seen her before when she was in the Celestial Expanse sect's secret zone. Beside her was a handsome young man named Fujin, the sixth holy son of the night ghost pavilion. The 6 holy sons of the night ghost pavilion were gathered together. This was indeed an extremely rare scene. It was also an indescribable shock. The dozen or so saints of the night ghost pavilion standing behind the 6 holy sons were naturally ignored by everyone. It couldn't be helped. Although the saints were strong, their influence couldn't be compared to the holy sons and holy daughters. In the entire North Star realm, the only person who could truly suppress the holy sons and holy daughters in terms of status was a quasi-saint great sovereign. The people of the various sects were pointing and gossiping. At the same time, on the starship, Hao Zong buried his head in his hands and yawned lazily. "I say, are the people from the Sacred Palace here yet? Are we still going to fight?" There wasn't the slightest hint of nervousness in his voice. When he heard Hao Zong's words, Gu Chengel laughed and said, "Senior brother Hao Zong, you can't be lazy this time. Otherwise, the great sovereign will definitely punish you when we return." I know. However, the great sovereign doesn't know about a mere sacred palace. I really didn't expect that he would order the 6 of us to fight together. Isn't he making a big fuss over nothing? Hao Zong complained when he heard Gu Chengel's words. From Hao Zong's tone, it seemed like he didn't want to come at all and was forced to come by the 3 quasi-saint great sovereigns of the night ghost pavilion. When she heard Hao Zong's words, Gu Chengel covered her mouth and chuckled. Because of her appearance, Gu Chengel's appearance was that of an 8 or 9-year-old little girl. Her smile looked rather innocent and cute, but if one really thought so, one would be gravely mistaken. This little girl was the 5th holy daughter of the night ghost pavilion. For some reason, as the first holy son, Mo Xie's attitude towards Hao Zong was unusually polite, even though a hint of displeasure flashed across his face when he heard Hao Zong's complaints. He even smiled apologetically. "Junior brother Hao Zong, this is a battle between the quasi-saint sections. If you slack off, we will be under a lot of pressure. The Sacred Palace is known to have 10 holy sons and holy daughters, so, junior brother, you can't slack off this time." Mo Xie's attitude towards Hao Zong was strangely polite. Hao Zong didn't change his attitude at all when he heard Mo Xie's words. It was as if he didn't care at all. All right. I'll fight 4 of them. Leave the rest to Yin Xiang, Xing Gang, and the others. If that doesn't work, there's still junior sister Changel. It's not like you don't know her strength. She's very strong, Hao Zong said nonchalantly. As soon as Hao Zong finished speaking, the Sacred Palace's fleet of spaceships finally appeared in the sky. There were also 20 spaceships, and they weren't any smaller than the Night Ghost Pavilion spaceships. They were golden in color and had a huge sacred word emblazoned on their hulls. The 20 Sacred Palace spaceships landed a few thousand meters away from the Night Ghost Pavilion. Sacred Palace experts strode out from the spaceships one after another. The 10 holy sons and holy daughters led by Xiao Chun walked out from the leading spaceship and quickly arrived at the end of the deck. Mo Xie, who was chatting with Hao Zong, suddenly froze when he saw this scene. 2 cold rays of light shot out from his eyes. At the same time, Xiao Chen's eyes also flashed with a cold light despite the smile on his face. Their gazes crossed the distance between them and fiercely collided in the air. Although they were far apart, Xiao Chun could already feel an extreme, killing intent from Mo Xie. For a moment, Xiao Chun couldn't help but chuckle softly. Looks like the Night Ghost Pavilion's fighting spirit is very strong this time. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 1141. Unlike the black robes worn by Mo Xie and the other chosen of the Night Ghost Pavilion, Xiao Chun and the other chosen of the Sacred Palace were dressed in golden robes. After the Sacred Palace members appeared, the spies from the various sects and clans couldn't help but gasp one after another. The Sacred Palace people are here too. Is it about to start? The 10 great holy sons and holy daughters of the Sacred Palace have all gathered here. Are the holy sons and holy daughters of the 2 great quasi-sage sects about to go to war? The 10 holy sons and holy daughters of the sacred palace? Where are they? Because the sacred palace had just been established, the reputation of the 10 chosen had yet to truly rise. Therefore, when they heard that the sacred palace chosen had gathered, some people who didn't know Xiao Chun and the other chosen asked curiously. Naturally, there were some who replied to the questions. Do you see the 10 people in golden robes at the front of the main ship's deck? They're the 10 holy sons and holy daughters of the sacred palace. Look at the person at the front. That's the first chosen of the sacred palace, Xiao Chun. The two beside him are the second chosen of the sacred palace, Chun Ling, and the third chosen of the sacred palace, Long Qing. It's said that the two of them are Xiao Chen's sworn siblings. That's the fourth chosen of the sacred palace, Chun Yu, the fifth chosen of the sacred palace, Qing Di, and the sixth chosen of the sacred palace, Bai Yi. Also, that's the seventh chosen of the sacred palace, Quan Lan, the eighth chosen of the sacred palace, Hu Fei, Yin Xuan, and the 10th chosen of the sacred palace, Jiang Yu. Perhaps none of the spies present were able to recognize the 10 chosen and saintesses of the sacred palace, but Xiao Chen's and the others' identities were finally recognized by the crowd under their chatter. However, their discussion didn't affect Xiao Chun and the others in the slightest. After meeting Mo Xie's gaze and hearing Xiao Chen's chuckle, Xiao Chun lazily said, "Sigh. What's the point of fighting? Can't we just sit down and have a chat with the Night Ghost Pavilion? As the saying goes, a smile is all that matters. Why must we fight to the death?" Everyone curled their lips when they heard Chun Yu's words. Things had already come to this point, yet this fellow still wanted to laugh off the enmity. Wasn't that just a fool's dream? If you're so capable, why don't you go up to the Night Ghost Pavilion and talk it over? See if I'll give you a big slap in the face. However, despite their helplessness, everyone knew Chun Yu's temper. Xiao Chun even said with a smile, "Senior brother Chun Yu, why don't you go up and talk to him? Let's see if the Night Ghost Pavilion is willing to let bygones be bygones and sit down for a discussion." Haha, forget it. Don't get yourself involved in the enmity when the time comes. That wouldn't be worth it. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Chun Yu smiled embarrassedly. In truth, Chun Yu was just lazy and didn't want to fight to the death. However, at this point, Chun Yu also knew that there was no way to avoid this battle. Chun Yu's reply made everyone smile helplessly. The atmosphere also relaxed because of him. However, at this moment, an angry roar suddenly came from the direction of the Night Ghost Pavilion. Mo Xie took the lead and rushed into the sky. Behind him, many cultivators from the Night Ghost Pavilion followed closely behind. More than 50,000 people stood proudly in the sky, forming a black mass that gave people a terrifying sense of oppression. "Xiao Chun, get over here and accept your death." Looking down from above, Mo Xie's gaze was locked onto Xiao Chun, who was on the sacred palace flagship. Xiao Chen's smile didn't falter when he heard Mo Xie's words. He also soared into the sky. At the same time, the sacred palace group followed closely behind, arriving before the Night Ghost Pavilion experts. Both sides added up to more than 100,000 people, and Mo Xie and Xiao Chun were at the front of their respective groups. At this point, the two were truly facing each other, less than 100 meters apart. Facing Xiao Chun once again, Mo Xie made no attempt to hide the killing intent in his eyes as he spoke viciously. "Xiao Chun, this day next year will be the anniversary of your death. Prepare to die." As he spoke, a terrifying, ghastly aura erupted from Mo Xie's body. Seeing this, Xiao Chun didn't show the slightest fear. He still had a faint smile on his face. Who doesn't know how to boast? If you can kill me, then do it. However, I'm afraid you don't have the ability to do so. Arrogant. Xiao Chun died. Xiao Chun and Mo Xie were old rivals. Both were first chosens, and since the first time they met in the Heaven Expanse sect's secret territory, the two had been fighting both openly and secretly. It could be said that Xiao Chun and Mo Xie's relationship was the worst among the first chosens in the Northern Star Boundary. Mo Xie viewed Xiao Chun as his mortal enemy and had to kill him. Xiao Chun was the same. Once there was an opportunity, Xiao Chun would definitely kill Mo Xie without hesitation. As the saying goes, When enemies meet, their eyes blaze with hatred. Hence, there was no need for unnecessary words. With a furious roar, Mo Xie took the initiative to attack, sending a palm strike toward Xiao Chun. In the face of Mo Xie's attack, Xiao Chun didn't underestimate him. He immediately took out the Wuchen's sword, which glowed faintly with golden light in his hand. Xiao Chen's aura instantly became fierce as he swung his sword, which collided fiercely with Mo Xie's ghastly palm. Immediately, the two attacks canceled each other out. At the same time, Xiao Chun and Mo Xie also leapt forward and engaged in a fierce battle. Since Mo Xie and Xiao Chun were engaged in a fierce battle, the others naturally wouldn't stay out of it. Chun Ling, Long Qing, Chun Yu, and the other sacred palace chosen and holy princes and holy maidens from the night ghost pavilion immediately engaged in a fierce battle with Hao Zong, Yin Xiang, and the other night ghost pavilion chosen and holy maidens. Holy sons against holy sons, saints against saints. More than 100,000 people from both sides immediately broke out in a great battle in the sky. The first battle between the two great quasi-sage sects had finally begun. As they watched the battle begin, the spies from the various sects in the distance all revealed expressions of fear. 100,000 people was not a large number, but their power was absolutely terrifying. As a result, many people chose to retreat once again, only daring to watch this battle from afar. They did not dare to advance recklessly, otherwise, if they were to be implicated in the battle, they would be unlucky and die in vain. It's starting. They're really fighting. Many people couldn't help but say. There weren't many people on both sides, but the person with the lowest cultivation was at the Tao King realm. So, when over 100,000 people with the lowest cultivation were at the Tao King realm, the imposing aura of such a battle would absolutely not be inferior to an army of 1 million or even 10 million. Ignoring the people below, Qin Shu and the other two girls were currently engaged in a battle with the prospective holy sons and holy maidens of the Night Ghost Pavilion. Xiao Chen couldn't care less about them because Xiao Chen's entire mind was focused on dealing with Mo Xie. Xiao Chen's improvement over the past few years was obvious to all, especially after his temper battle body had broken through to the 3rd level. Now, Xiao Chen truly had the ability to fight Mo Xie. Mo Xie had the most direct experience of this point. Back in the Sky Expanse sect's secret domain, Xiao Chun had to join forces with Chun Ling to fight against him. But now, Xiao Chun was fighting him alone. Even though it had only been a dozen or so moves, Xiao Chun was not at a disadvantage at all. Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 1142. Back then, when he first met Xiao Chun in the Celestial Expanse sect's secret territory, Xiao Chun was merely a slightly larger ant in Mo Xie's eyes. In a one-on-one fight, Mo Xie would not have taken Xiao Chun seriously at all. However, Xiao Chun had grown to such a level in just a few years. Xiao Chun was not at a disadvantage in a one-on-one fight. Mo Xie's expression was extremely ugly. Xiao Chen's growth had far exceeded Mo Xie's expectations. Compared to Mo Xie's disgust, Xiao Chun was incomparably carefree. At the same time, the battle intent in his heart continued to soar. Xiao Chun had once been chosen as the first chosen by Xiao Sheng and the other 4 ancestors. No one knew how much pressure Xiao Chun had been under back then. In particular, after his first encounter with Mo Xie, Xiao Chun could feel the gap between himself and the other first chosen. That huge gap made Xiao Chun involuntarily feel a sense of powerlessness. However, Xiao Chun did not give up in the face of such pressure. Instead, he gritted his teeth and persevered, not letting go of any opportunity to improve himself. For example, the heaven domain of the 9 heavens. If it was anyone else, they would definitely not have entered it, but Xiao Chun had agreed. It was under such crazy efforts that Xiao Chun finally had the ability and capital to compete with Mo Xie and the other first chosen. As if he wanted to release all the pressure that had been weighing on him over the years, Xiao Chun swung his sword and used the Saint-grade martial skill, 9 sifting sword chi. As the sword swept past, layers of ripples appeared in space. At the same time, Xiao Chun shouted coldly, "Mo Xia, do you think it's still the same as back in the Celestial Expanse Sect's secret territory? I've already said that if you want to kill me, you'll have to have the ability first." It was only at this moment that Xiao Chun truly stood on the divine pedestal of the younger generation in the Northern Star Boundary, a pedestal that only a few people were qualified to stand on. Faced with Xiao Chen's counterattack and cold shout, Mo Xia's expression was extremely gloomy. He could not help but curse. "Damn it, damned ant. Do you think you can stand shoulder to shoulder with me like this? What a joke." In just a few short years, Xiao Chun, who had once been a nobody, had grown to a level where he could fight Mo Xia. Mo Xia found it hard to accept for a while. As soon as he finished speaking, Mo Xia also slapped out with his palm, using the magic of the Ghost Clan right away, clashing with Xiao Chen's Jiu Luo sword chi. The two powerful attacks collided fiercely, and the terrifying shockwaves blew away the surrounding cultivators, causing cracks to appear in the space. Although his cultivation was not at the level of a half-saint, he had the ability to shatter space. This was how terrifying the saint was. Both of them attacked with hatred, so they naturally did not show any mercy. But even so, neither of them could do anything to the other in this head-on collision. Their attacks canceled each other out. Seeing this, the two of them leaped up at the same time and started fighting again. Xiao Chun and Mo Xia were locked in a fierce battle, while Chun Ling, Long Qing, and the others were not in a good situation. Long Qing and Chun Ling were facing off against Yin Xiang and Xing Gang respectively. As for Hao Zong, just as he had said before the battle, he had single-handedly taken on Emperor Qing and the other 3 saints. Hao Zong seemed to be having an easy time fighting 1 against 4. On the other hand, Emperor Qing and the other 3 were completely suppressed by Hao Zong. The battle between the two sides was just as everyone had guessed. Although the Night Ghost Pavilion had fewer saints and saintesses, they were much stronger than the Sacred Palace saints and saintesses. This was the difference in foundation. Although the Sacred Palace had spared no effort to support Xiao Chun and the other saints and saintesses in their cultivation, it had only been a short time. Moreover, the Sacred Palace's foundation was almost non-existent, so everyone's progress was limited. On the other hand, the 6 saints and saintesses of the Night Ghost Pavilion had been famous for many years, and their names were known throughout the North Star Boundary. The difference in foundation between the two sides was most obvious in the battle between the saints. In the midst of the intense battle, after more than 100 moves, Hao Zong struck Jiang Yu's chest with his palm. Jiang Yu spat out a mouthful of blood as he was sent flying. Fortunately, Emperor Qing caught him. Otherwise, he would have been severely injured. Hao Zong had injured Jiang Yu with a single palm strike, but it had only been 100 moves since the start of the battle, and Jiang Yu was already injured. Seeing that Emperor Qing had saved Jiang Yu, Hao Zong did not continue his pursuit. Instead, he said lazily, "You guys are no match for me. Why don't we stop here? You guys don't understand, and I don't understand either. Anyway, I promised Mo Xia that I would help him hold back the 4 Sacred Palace Saints, and I've done that. What do you think?" Emperor Qing and the others' expressions turned ugly when they heard Hao Zong's words. However, before the 4 of them could reply, a round of applause sounded. Clap, 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 good, good. That's a good suggestion. It would be best if we don't have to fight. Fighting and killing is really annoying. If we have the time, we might as well sit down and have a drink. Chen Yu appeared before Emperor Qing and the others with a smile. The moment Chen Yu appeared, the 6th saint of the Night Ghost Pavilion, Fu Jin, also arrived beside Hao Zong. However, there was a trace of blood at the corner of Fu Jin's mouth. He was clearly injured. Previously, Chen Yu was fighting with Fu Jin, while Emperor Qing and the others were fighting with Hao Zong. Chen Yu was clearly much stronger than Fu Jin, which was why Fu Jin was injured. However, When Yu saw that Emperor Qing and the others were in a bad situation, he took the initiative to rush over. Fu Jin did not stop him. Of course, he could not stop him because he was not as strong as Yu. Hao Zong glanced at Fu Jin, who had a trace of blood at the corner of his mouth, and a strange look flashed across his eyes. Seeing this, Fu Jin said with shame, "Senior brother, I am not his opponent. He is very strong." Fu Jin admitted that he was not as good as Yu. Hao Zong did not say anything and continued to smile at Yu. As for Emperor Qing and the other three, they were ignored by Fu Jin. Hao Zong did not say anything. "You're right. Fighting and killing is indeed boring. Why don't we sit down and have a drink?" Hao Zong did not show any signs of anger, even though Yu had injured Fu Jin. On the contrary, he spoke as if he was chatting with an old friend. Those who did not know would think that he and Yu were old friends who had not seen each other for many years. Yu smiled when he heard Hao Zong's words. "How about it? I'll agree to your request. We won't fight, and you won't fight either. How about we wait until the battle ends? After all, there's no harm in losing a few of us, right?" Hao Zong smiled at Yu's suggestion and glanced at Mo Xie, who was fighting fiercely with Xiao Chun. The smile in his eyes did not diminish. No one knew what he was thinking. After a while, he turned his gaze back to Yu. The smile on his face became extremely helpless and bitter. "I also want to begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations." Chapter 1143. "I also want to promise you," Hao Zong said with a helpless and bitter smile. But he paused for a moment before continuing. "All right, I'll agree to it too." Hao Zong's smile turned into a helpless and bitter one. "However, I'm afraid I can't do it this time. Our great sovereign has given a death order. Moreover, junior brother Mo Xie is also putting his life on the line. If I continue to sit here and chat with you, I'm afraid I'll be severely punished when I return." Yu shook his head with a bitter smile. "As expected, it's the same for us." Both of them did not like to fight. However, the current situation did not allow them to slack off. Hao Zong glanced at Fu Jin, and Yu also glanced at Emperor Qing and the other four as he said, "Let's go. You guys go. I'll deal with him." With Hao Zong's strength, Emperor Qing and the other three would not be able to deal with him. Emperor Qing did not say anything after hearing Yu's words. He had known Yu for quite some time. However, Emperor Qing had never truly seen through Yu's strength. Yu was like a bottomless pit. Just when you thought you had reached the bottom, you realized that it was still unfathomable. The four emperors nodded and took the initiative to leave. Fu Jin did the same. Yu took the initiative to face Hao Zong. As a result, the situation between the Night Ghost Pavilion and the Sacred Palace Chosens became like this. Xiao Chun faced Mo Xie. Yu faced Hao Zong. Chun Ling and Long Qing faced Yin Xiang and Xing Gang respectively. As for the Azure Emperor by Yi and Quan Lan, they teamed up against Gu Chengel, while Hu Fei, Yin Chuan, and Jiang Yu teamed up against Fu Jin. In other words, only 4 of the 10 Sacred Palace Chosens had the ability to take on the 6-Night Ghost Pavilion Chosens alone. They were Xiao Chun, Chun Ling, Long Qing, and Chun Yu. The others didn't have the ability to do so. This was the gap between their foundations. After exchanging opponents, everyone began fighting again. Yu and Hao Zong stood facing each other. Neither side made a move. Hao Zong sighed. "I originally thought that this would be an easy battle, but seems that I underestimated the Sacred Palace. You must be the second chosen of the Sacred Palace, right?" It was normal that Hao Zong had never heard of Chun Yu's name before. After all, the Sacred Palace had been established for many years, and if one were to ask who was the most low-key and mysterious chosen among the 10 great chosen, it would definitely be Chun Yu. That was because he had basically never participated in any battles and naturally had no reputation. However, Hao Zong was certain from Chun Yu's aura that he was a formidable opponent. A very, very formidable opponent. Therefore, Hao Zong naturally treated Chun Yu as the second chosen of the Sacred Palace. However, Chun Yu smiled and shook his head when he heard Hao Zong's words. I'm afraid I'll have to disappoint you. I'm ranked among the 10 great chosen of the sacred palace. He's the second chosen, junior brother Ling, and that's the third holy maiden, junior sister Longqing. As for the first chosen, I don't think I need to introduce him, right? Yu was not the second chosen of the sacred palace. He was only ranked 4th among the 10 great chosen of the sacred palace. As he spoke, Yu pointed in the direction of Ling and Longqing, which could be considered as an introduction to Hao Zong. Looking in the direction that Yu was pointing at, Hao Zong saw Ling and Longqing, who were engaged in a fierce battle with Yin Xiang and Xinggang. However, just as Hao Zong's attention was diverted, Yu, who was still acting lazily, suddenly chose to launch a sneak attack. Yu did not seem to have made any movements, but his figure seemed to have disappeared from the spot. Soon after, he appeared in front of Hao Zong and pointed a finger at him. A beam of platinum light shot out. In a battle between two people, Yu was a chosen of the sacred palace. Launching a sneak attack was indeed not something to be proud of. However, Hao Zong displayed his superior combat prowess in response to Yu's sneak attack. What should have been a sure hit attack was easily dodged by Yu. Hao Zong easily avoided Yu's sneak attack and pulled away from Yu at the same time. Yu did not attack again when he saw this. Hao Zong also withdrew his gaze and looked at Yu again. There was no anger on his face as he calmly said, I really did not expect that a chosen of the sacred palace would launch a sneak attack. I only wanted to injure you so that the battle will be a little easier. After all, I'm not confident I can defeat you. Yu did not feel embarrassed at all when he heard Hao Zong's words. Yu was definitely a person who did things his own way. He did not care about his reputation, nor did he care about power. He did things completely based on his own interests. Thus, perhaps other saints would not hesitate to launch sneak attacks because of their own reputation. But to Yu, this was no pressure at all. Hao Zong smiled when he saw that Yu did not avoid his gaze at all. Actually, with your strength, being the 4th chosen is too much for you. The 2nd and 3rd chosen of your sacred palace are not your match. Ling and Longqing were not Yu's match. This was Hao Zong's answer. Yu did not refute it, but did not admit it either. Hao Zong continued, Can I ask you a question before we fight? Sure, ask whatever you want. It would be best if you could ask until the end of the battle. Yu smiled. Haha, you're thinking too much. I only have one question. Between the first chosen, Shao Chun, and you, who is stronger? Hao Zong smiled when he heard Yu's answer. Between you and Shao Chun. This was Hao Zong's question. After all, Shao Chun was able to fight Mo Xie to a standstill, which was already sufficient proof of his strength. In response to Hao Zong's question, Yu smiled and said, Junior brother Shao Chun is the most talented person I've ever seen. Even the mysterious junior brother Ling and junior sister Longqing are not Shao Chun's match. If junior brother Shao Chun is given a few more decades, he may be able to surpass me. However, I believe that defeating him now is not difficult. Ling and Longqing were the reincarnation of a great expert, while the other was a pure-blooded Dragon Clan member. They were already considered top geniuses, but in Yu's opinion, they were still inferior to Shao Chun in terms of talent. However, even the powerful Shao Chun was still not enough in Yu's eyes. This was the first time Yu had said something like this. It was not intentional at all. On the contrary, it was as if he was stating a fact. Hearing Yu's words, Hao Zong smiled bitterly and shook his head. Looks like I've really picked the worst one. All right, enough chit-chat. We can start now. Wait a minute. The current Yu was stronger than Shao Chun. Hao Zong was helpless. He did not expect that he would pick the strongest opponent. However, just as he finished speaking, Yu suddenly spoke. I've answered your question. Shouldn't you also answer mine? Between you and Mo Xie, who is stronger? Begging for your collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 1144. Yu did not hide anything in front of Hao Zong. Shao Chun was indeed the first chosen of the sacred palace, but in terms of strength, Chun Yu was still stronger than Xiao Chun. Of course, this also included Chun Ling and Long Qing. Let's put it this way. In terms of strength alone, Chun Yu should be the strongest person among the younger generation of the Sacred Palace. Unfortunately, this guy was lazy by nature and was even more unwilling to bear the responsibility of being the first chosen. Therefore, during the selection, Chun Yu did not fight with Xiao Chun, Chun Ling, or Long Qing at all. Even the position of the fourth chosen was deliberately given up by Emperor Qing and the others. Otherwise, given Chun Yu's character, he would probably have directly become the 10th chosen. He just wanted to live his life freely. This was Chun Yu's way of thinking. It was very simple. Hao Zong glanced at Mo Xie when he heard Chun Yu's words. This time, Chun Yu did not attack. Hao Zong withdrew his gaze after a while and said with a smile, I should be a little stronger than junior brother Mo Xie now, but I believe junior brother Mo Xie will surpass me soon. One of them was the fourth chosen of the Sacred Palace, while the other was the second chosen of the Night Ghost Pavilion. Although they did not seem to be the first chosen, both of them could be called uncrowned kings in terms of strength because they were stronger than the first chosen of their respective sections. Of course, their personalities were very similar. They were both very lazy and would avoid responsibility as much as possible. Because of this, neither of them had any thoughts about being the so-called first chosen. After hearing Hao Zong's reply, although Chun Yu had already guessed the answer, he still sighed softly and said, It seems like we're in the same boat. If I had known earlier, I would have chosen Mo Xie. It's much easier to fight him than to fight you. Chun Yu was obviously joking. However, there was one thing that Chun Yu didn't mention. He was confident that he could defeat Mo Xie. However, he didn't have the same confidence if he were to face Hao Zong. As if he had guessed Chun Yu's thoughts, Hao Zong smiled and said, If that's the case, I'm afraid the first chosen of your Sacred Palace will fall here. If Chun Yu really fought Mo Xie, then Xiao Chun would naturally have to fight Hao Zong. According to Hao Zong, he was fully confident that he could kill Xiao Chun. There was no arrogance in Hao Zong's words. Chun Yu did not refute. Instead, he smiled and said, Then I have to thank you. If anything happens to junior brother Xiao Chun, while they were chatting casually, Chun Yu attacked again without any warning. It was still a sneak attack. This time, Chun Yu had taken out his own sword, a Saint Tier sword. The sword was called the Ancient Saint's Sword, and it was once the Ancient Saint Sect's treasure. It was also the sword of the Burning Lamp ancestor. However, after the establishment of the Sacred Palace and the Burning Lamp ancestor broke through to the quasi-saint realm, the sword was passed down to Chun Yu. Holding the Ancient Saint Sword in his hand, a terrifying sword will erupted from Chun Yu's body in a short period of time. Chun Yu had already reached the perfect realm. He slashed out with his sword. Faced with Chun Yu's sneak attack again, Hao Zong was already prepared this time. He did not panic at all. He pointed his finger and instantly unleashed the Ghost Clan's super ability. A black light flashed and instantly collided with Chun Yu's sword aura. Hao Zong smiled after easily blocking Chun Yu's sneak attack. You really like sneak attacks. As a chosen of the Sacred Palace, don't you think it's a little degrading? Hee hee, black and white cats are good cats as long as they can catch mice. The method is not important. The final result is the most important. Besides, it's not surprising for me to use some tricks against a strong enemy like you. After all, I don't have absolute confidence in winning. In the face of Hao Zong's ridiculing words, Chun Yu laughed without the slightest bit of embarrassment. His body moved, and he immediately disappeared from his original spot. In fact, the Sacred Palace disciples basically did not see Chun Yu in action after the Sacred Palace's power transmission. Every day, Chun Yu was like a dissolute young master. He would either drink or play around. As a result, many new Sacred Palace disciples believed that the fourth chosen of the ethereal Sacred Palace did not have any ability at all. However, these were all guesses. At this moment, the power that Chun Yu displayed was absolutely ridiculously strong. Putting everything else aside, Chun Yu's movement and speed had far surpassed that of Xiao Chun and his siblings. He took a step forward, and his body seemed to have teleported. The helplessness in Hao Zong's eyes grew stronger in the face of Chun Yu's terrifying speed. He softly muttered, "I'm the same when facing him." Sigh. Hao Zong turned around and punched out. With a muffled sound, Chun Yu's figure appeared. Hao Zong's fist and Chun Yu's sword collided. Chun Yu's speed was fast, but it could not escape Hao Zong's eyes. Moreover, Hao Zong was not slow either. He could easily catch up with Chun Yu. The two collided head-on. Chun Yu was not surprised that Hao Zong could keep up with his speed. He let go of the sword in his hand and punched out with his right fist. Hao Zong also raised his fist to meet the attack. The two collided fiercely. The ancient saint's sword spun a few times in the air. However, Hao Zong did not expect Chun Yu to hold the ancient saint's sword with his left hand. At the same time, Chun Yu slashed out without any hesitation. Left-handed sword? Hao Zong did not expect Chun Yu's left-handed sword to be so exquisite. One should know that as a sword cultivator, unless they were using two swords, they would only focus on one arm under normal circumstances. They would either use a sword in their right hand or a sword in their left hand. Of course, it did not mean that a sword cultivator who used a sword in his right hand would not use a sword in his left hand. However, because they were used to using a sword in their right hand, the sword in their left hand would not be as sharp as the sword in their right hand. This was certain. However, Chun Yu was different. He used a sword in his right hand at the beginning, but now he was using a sword in his left hand. His sword technique did not weaken at all after switching hands. His speed and strength did not decrease either. This was a very terrifying thing. To be able to cultivate both hands to the same level was not something that could be achieved with hard work. One must have a high enough talent. Otherwise, it would be difficult to achieve anything even if one practiced for a lifetime. The sudden change caused Hao Zong's expression to freeze. At the same time, the ancient saint's sword was already heading straight for Hao Zong's throat. Its speed was as fast as lightning, and a cold light flashed past. Hao Zong dodged and quickly retreated. However, the corner of his robe was still cut off by Chun Yu. The corner of his clothes flew up. Hao Zong and Chun Yu pulled apart a distance. Seeing this, Chun Yu smiled helplessly and switched his sword to his right hand. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. In a chapter. Chapter 1145. When Hao Zong saw Chun Yu casually toss the ancient saint's sword back to his right hand, he touched his neck. At this moment, there was already a line of blood on his neck. That sword strike, just now, was indeed too dangerous. If he had been just a little bit later, Chun Yu's sword would probably have slit his throat. Hao Zong smiled bitterly and said, "This is really troublesome. Your sword is the strongest sword I've ever seen." Chun Yu's sword technique might not be the most domineering, but it was the sharpest. In particular, it left no trace, making it impossible to guard against. Hearing Hao Zong's words, Chun Yu smiled and said, "No matter how strong it is, it can't hurt you." He never thought that he would be able to hurt Hao Zong with such a small trick. Therefore, Chun Yu wasn't too disappointed with the result. Hearing Chun Yu's words, it was Hao Zong's turn to take the initiative to attack. Hao Zong was extremely fearful of Chun Yu's swordsmanship. However, just as Chun Yu had expected, Hao Zong wouldn't put him in his eyes if Chun Yu only had such small tricks. As the two of them fought, one could see the ancient saint sword in Chun Yu's hand dancing in the intense battle. It constantly switched between his left and right hand, and the angle of attack covered Hao Zong's entire body. Chun Yu was definitely the first person to cultivate both his left and right hands to such a level. This was because even Xiao Chun couldn't do it. Of course, Xiao Chun and Chun Yu walked different paths. Naturally, their understanding of the way of the sword was different. Therefore, Xiao Chun had never deliberately cultivated to switch between his left and right hands. As the two of them fought, Chun Yu's sword technique could be said to have reached the acme of perfection. Even many saints of the current era couldn't compare to him. On the other hand, Hao Zong's Ghost Clan's remarkable abilities were endless. Clearly, his development of the power of his bloodline had reached the pinnacle. The battle between the two of them was especially intense. At the same time, Xiao Chun and Mo Xie's battle had also reached the climax. After the initial rage, Mo Xie had calmed down. Although Xiao Qin's improvement had made him angry and unexpected, it was useless to be angry. It was better to calm down and think about how to defeat Xiao Qin. Mo Xie wasn't as angry as he was at the beginning. He was also locked in battle with Xiao Qin. In the past few years, Xiao Qin had indeed grown to the point where he could fight Mo Xie. Mo Xie had also started to take Xiao Qin seriously. No matter how one looked at it, Xiao Qin was on equal footing with him now. It was difficult to tell who was stronger. Mo Xie's pair of ghost claws exuded thick black qi. They clashed with Xiao Qin's Wuchen sword, producing a series of metallic clangs. The battle had been going on for a long time. The two of them had lost count of how many moves they had exchanged. Both of them had some wounds on their bodies, but so far, neither Mo Xie nor Xiao Qin had the upper hand. Jiu Luo Sword Qi. Mo Xie slashed with his sword and displayed the sacred level martial skill, Jiu Luo Sword Qi. Sacred level martial skills were basically useless against Mo Xie. Xiao Qin knew this very well. Hence, he used the Jiu Luo Sword Qi right away. Mo Xie didn't dare to be careless when facing the attack of the Jiu Luo Sword Qi. He immediately displayed the Ghost Clan's divine skill and clawed down. The Ghost Claw and the Sword Qi collided fiercely. Neither of them could do anything to the other. It was another intense collision. The Black Ghost Claw and the Jiu Luo Sword Qi collided fiercely. Terrifying airwaves spread out and the space was directly shattered by the two of them. They couldn't remember how many times the space had collapsed. Following the collapse of the space, a terrifying void storm appeared. Fortunately, there was no one around. Otherwise, the weaker disciples of the two sects would have been sucked into the void. At the same time, they were pushed back dozens of meters by the void storm and airwaves. Mo Xie forcibly stopped his body. He looked at Xiao Qin first. Black waves soared up from his body. The black waves rushed toward Xiao Qin like a tidal wave. This was also a divine skill of the Ghost Clan. It was the strongest divine skill of the Ghost Clan. Xiao Qin, go to hell. Ghost Qi fills the sky. The Ghost Qi fills the sky was the strongest divine skill of the Ghost Clan. The Ghost Clan members who could activate the Ghost Qi fills the sky were all experts. Just like the great demon body of the Demon Clan, ordinary ghosts couldn't awaken the Ghost Qi fills the sky. At this point in the battle, Mo Xie was no longer holding back. He had already used all of his strongest moves. Faced with the Ghost Clan's strongest magic, the Ghost Aura Sky, Xiao Qin also pushed his tempered battle body to the extreme. Golden light flashed all over his body. Then, the thick ghost aura turned into a huge black wave and rushed toward Xiao Qin, drowning him in it. The sky where the two were fighting was completely covered by the Ghost Qi. It felt as if a black cloth covered the sky, covering the moon and the sky. Xiao Qin felt as if he was enveloped by something after being engulfed by the Ghost Qi fills the sky. He was surrounded by darkness. There was no sound, no aura, and he couldn't sense Mo Xie's existence. Mo Xie's aura had been completely cut off. He could only see darkness with the naked eye. He couldn't determine where Mo Xie was. At this moment, Mo Xie's voice came from all directions in the dark space. Xiao Qin, it's your honor to die under the Ghost Clan's strongest divine skill. Die. It was impossible to determine Mo Xie's location from his voice. As soon as he finished speaking, two ghost claws suddenly stretched out from under Xiao Qin's feet. They grabbed Xiao Qin's feet, making him unable to move. His movements were restricted. At the same time, without waiting for Xiao Qin to react, Mo Xie appeared behind Xiao Qin as if he had appeared out of thin air. He fiercely clawed at Xiao Qin's back. For bloody marks appeared on Xiao Qin's back, and fresh blood flowed out. Xiao Qin immediately broke free from the two ghost claws. He turned around and slashed out Jian E/. However, Mo Xie had mysteriously disappeared. The attack didn't hit Mo Xie, and Mo Xie seemed to have merged with the darkness. Xiao Chen frowned. The Ghost Clan's strongest divine skill, Ghost Chi fills the sky, was too strange. Not to mention the two ghost claws that suddenly appeared. Just Mo Xie's aura alone was enough. No matter how good a cultivator's concealment skills were, it was impossible for them to not reveal even a little bit of their aura. Moreover, Mo Xie and Xiao Chun were so close. Although he couldn't determine Mo Xie's location, Xiao Chun was sure that Mo Xie was right beside him. At such a close distance, he actually couldn't sense any trace of Mo Xie's aura. This was somewhat terrifying, not to mention Mo Xie's sudden appearance and disappearance just now. From the previous exchange, Mo Xie definitely didn't possess such speed. Begging for collection, begging for monthly votes, begging for recommendations. End of chapter. Chapter 1146. The aura that had vanished completely. The sudden appearance and disappearance, as if it had teleported, and the mysterious, ghostly claw. All of this was clearly related to Ghastly Sky. As the strongest ability of the Ghost Clan, the might of Ghastly Sky absolutely couldn't be underestimated. Xiao Chun was aware of this. However, when he truly fell into it, Xiao Chun had no way of dealing with it for a moment. Just as Xiao Chun frowned slightly and became vigilant, Mo Xie's voice resounded once more from the darkness. However, Mo Xie's voice carried a wisp of ridicule this time. Xiao Chun, this is the strongest ability of my Ghost Clan, Ghastly Sky. How is it? Do you still think you're a match for me in here? As soon as he finished speaking, the two ghostly claws that Xiao Chun had forcefully struggled free from earlier appeared once more, before grabbing tightly onto Xiao Chen's feet once more. At the same time, Mo Xie suddenly appeared on Mo Xie's left hand and clawed out. Even though Xiao Chun had reacted immediately and stabbed out with his sword, he still failed to hit Mo Xie. On the other hand, another 4 bloody marks appeared on Xiao Chen's left shoulder. Xiao Chen knew very little about the ghost aura. After all, it was impossible for the Ghost Clan to reveal the secret of the ghost aura to the public. Furthermore, the number of Ghost Clan members who were capable of using the ghost aura was simply too few. Actually, the most terrifying thing about the Ghost Chi filling sky was the endless darkness. Simply put, the ghost aura sky was an independent space formed by the ghost aura. The ghost race could move freely within it, and they could even remove the darkness and teleport for short distances. At the same time, their aura would be completely concealed. Moreover, because the world filled with Ghost Chi was filled with Ghost Chi, the caster could use the Ghost Chi to condense a ghost claw to restrict or attack the people trapped in it at any time and place as long as the caster willed it. It could be said that the Ghost Chi filling the sky was a powerful divine ability that could strengthen the battle prowess of the ghost race and weaken the enemy. Within it, the strength of the caster would be strengthened to the maximum, while the strength of the trapped would be greatly weakened. There was no other way to break the ghost aura sky. The only thing that could be done was to break it with brute force. However, this required an extremely powerful strength. Otherwise, it would be difficult to break the ghost aura sky. Guessing that he was trapped, Xiao Chun also thought of forcefully breaking out of this place. As long as he could escape, Mo Xie would not have any more tricks up his sleeve. One had to know that although ghost energy filling the sky was powerful, it consumed a lot of energy. Even Mo Xie could not use ghost energy filling the sky twice in a row in a short period of time. As long as he could break through this bullsh *T ghost energy sky, he could still fight. Thinking of this, Xiao Chen secretly began to accumulate his strength. Then, he suddenly slashed out with his sword. The tip of the sword streaked across the sky and headed straight for the darkness in front of him. Just as the tip of the sword was about to hit the barrier of ghost energy filling the sky, a layer of black, ghastly sky gathered and counteracted Xiao Chen's attack. Xiao Chen, you want to break through my ghost energy filling the sky? You are simply delusional. In this world of ghost energy filling the sky, Missouri Xie was the king. Even the slightest movement of Xiao Chun could not escape Mo Xie's perception. Therefore, if Xiao Chun wanted to break through the ghost energy filling the sky by force, Mo Xie could immediately respond and strengthen the defense of that area. After successfully blocking Xiao Chun's attack, in Mo Xie's opinion, Xiao Chun was a turtle in a jar. He could torture him at will. In any case, Xiao Chun had no way to perceive his existence in this place. And Mo Xie could rely on the help of ghost energy filling the sky to appear and disappear unpredictably. He could attack Xiao Chun from any direction and any angle. As soon as his voice fell, the ghost hand appeared again. This time, it directly grabbed Xiao Chun's hands. Mo Xie also appeared in front of Xiao Chun strangely. He stretched out his claws and left 4 bloody marks on Xiao Chun's chest. Then, he once again hid in the darkness. Mo Xie was not in a hurry to kill Xiao Chun. He wanted to bully Xiao Chun properly. He wanted to torture him and make him wish he was dead. In Mo Xie's opinion, Xiao Chun was already a fish on the chopping board. If he killed him too quickly, there would be no fun. Over and over again, Mo Xie appeared eerily, and Xiao Chun could not do anything about it. Seeing Xiao Chun's injuries getting worse and worse, and the blood flowing out of the wounds, Mo Xie felt that he could not suppress his excitement. The sacred palace, Chosen's robe, was already in tatters. Although the robe was a defensive treasure, it was clearly not enough to withstand Mo Xie's attacks. Xiao Chun unconsciously panted heavily. He had expended a lot of energy, and his injuries made him feel incomparably painful. He looked rather miserable. Xiao Chun, what's wrong? Does it hurt a lot? Beg me, and I'll give you a quick death. How about it? Mo Xie's voice rang out in the darkness once again. His voice was filled with unconcealable excitement. After suffering at Xiao Chun's hands several times, he could finally torture Xiao Chun without restraint this time. How could Mo Xie not be excited? Perhaps even Mo Xie himself did not know that Xiao Chun had unknowingly become his nightmare. Every time he thought of Xiao Chun, Mo Xie only felt the anger in his chest that could not be vented. But now, Xiao Chun was seriously injured, and Mo Xie could torture him however he wanted. In the face of Mo Xie's constant attacks, Xiao Chun had also tried to forcefully break through the ghost chi-filling sky several times. Unfortunately, Mo Xie was able to sense his attacks in advance and react in the shortest time possible. As a result, Xiao Chun naturally could not succeed. Forcefully breaking through the ghost chi-filling sky was probably impossible. As such, he could only find another way. After being struck by Mo Xie's claws again, another 4 bloody wounds appeared on his body, and he coughed out a mouthful of blood. Xiao Chun looked like he was seriously injured and on the verge of death. However, he still spoke indifferently. Ghost chi-filling sky. What a powerful ability of the ghost race. However, Mo Xie, how long can you maintain such an ability? As long as this fig leaf does not exist, Mo Xie, do you still dare to fight me? The ghost chi-filling sky was very powerful, but maintaining it was extremely difficult. With Mo Xie's strength, it was just as Xiao Chun had said. He couldn't maintain it for long. At most, he could maintain it for an hour. Of course, this was already sufficiently terrifying in the ghost race. As long as the ghost chi-filling sky is gone, then I, Xiao Chun, am not afraid of you, Mo Xie. Mo Xie laughed coldly when he heard Xiao Chun. Haha, Xiao Chun, you're really naive. Indeed, the ghost chi-filling sky consumes a lot of energy. I can't maintain it for long, but do you think you can survive until then? My next attack will take your life. Begging for a monthly vote, begging for a recommendation. End of chapter. Chapter 1147. Xiao Chun was already seriously injured and on the verge of death. Seeing this, Mo Xie felt that victory was already in his hands. He did not think that Xiao Chun was acting because Mo Xie knew his own attacking ability. Xiao Chen had taken so many of his attacks head-on and was still alive. This was something to be proud of. He did not have the slightest doubt about Xiao Chen's injuries at all. Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Xie was also ready to give Xiao Chen the final blow. He had played enough. Moreover, the ghost energy sky could not be used for too long, so it was time to end Xiao Chen. Thinking of this, Xie, who was hiding in the darkness, had two terrifying, murderous intents in his eyes. He stared at Xiao Chen and said in an extremely cold voice, "Xiao Chen, this blow will send you to hell." Saying this, Xie's figure disappeared mysteriously in the darkness. At the same time, for ghost claws stretched out from the darkness and firmly locked Xiao Chen's hands and feet. At the same time, Xie appeared in front of Xiao Chen out of thin air. He grabbed Xiao Chen fiercely, and the sharp ghost claws went straight for Xiao Chen's heart. Obviously, he wanted to kill Xiao Chen with one blow. There was a ferocious smile on his face. However, Xie did not see that when he attacked, Xiao Chen, who was seriously injured and on the verge of death, also had a faint smile on his face. This was the smile of a person who had succeeded in his scheme. At such a close distance and at such a fast speed, Xie naturally did not believe that Xiao Chen could dodge his killing blow. However, he probably did not think that Xiao Chen had no intention of dodging this blow. Xiao Chen only wanted to avoid the vital parts of his body. Only avoiding the vital parts, not the attack, was naturally different. The former was much easier. Therefore, just as Xie's ghost claws were about to hit Xiao Chen suddenly broke free from the ghost claws that were binding his limbs. Then his body tilted slightly, and Xie's attack hit Xiao Chen's chest, but missed the vital part of his heart. Xie successfully dodged the attack. At the same time, before Xie could react, Xiao Chen's right hand had already grabbed Xie's wrist tightly. "You won't be able to escape this time," Xiao Chen said with a smile. Upon hearing this, Xie understood Xiao Chen's intention and looked at Xiao Chen gloomily. "Xiao Chen, you." Xie was not stupid. Unable to break through the ghost aura forcefully and unable to lock onto Xie's position, Xiao Chen could only come up with this plan. He used himself as bait, and Xie would reveal himself to launch a killing blow while Xiao Chen restrained Xie. This way, Xie wouldn't be able to escape. This was the only solution Xiao Chen came up with. Of course, the reason why Xie fell into this trap so easily was also due to Xiao Chen's injuries. In Xie's opinion, Xiao Chen's injuries were so severe that it was obvious that he couldn't retaliate and was like an arrow at the end of its flight. Therefore, Xie let down his guard against Xiao Chen. Logically speaking, Xie's guess wasn't wrong. If it were other people, even if it were other holy sons, Xiao Chen's injuries would indeed be severe. However, Xiao Chen had the temper battle body and had reached the third stage of the celestial body. The same injuries might be fatal to others, but they were nothing to Xiao Chen. Xie's estimation of his injuries wasn't wrong, but he had indeed underestimated the strength of Xiao Chen's body. It was because of this that Xie fell into this trap. Everything that happened before was just a deliberate trick by Xiao Chen. His injuries did seem severe, but with the strength of Xiao Chen's body, he wouldn't lose his combat strength. This was the strength of the celestial body. With the same injuries, others might have died, but Xiao Chen was still alive and kicking. Grabbing Xie's right hand tightly, Xiao Chen raised his head and said with a faint smile, "You want to ask how I can still fight when my injuries are so severe, right?" Xie, you're quite good at controlling your injuries. That's right, such an injury would be fatal if it happened to anyone else. However, it's nothing to me. Your control over your injuries is perfect. However, you've underestimated the strength of my body. You, Xiao Chen, you." Hearing Xiao Chen's words, Xie suddenly understood. Looking at Xiao Chen, who was so close to him, he couldn't say anything. The strength of Xiao Chen's body was far beyond Xie's imagination, so he fell into this trap. As soon as he finished speaking, a golden light shot up into the sky from Xiao Chen's body. In this dark world, This golden light was like a guiding light, incomparably dazzling. The golden light enveloped Shao Chun. This was the golden light emitted by the tempered battle body. At the same time, under the illumination of this golden light, the wounds on Shao Chun's body began to heal at an extremely fast speed. The third celestial body not only allowed Shao Chun's body to undergo a qualitative change, but also gave him an extremely terrifying ability, which was self-healing. After breaking through the third celestial body, as long as he operated the tempered battle body, all the injuries on his body could be healed in the shortest time. No, it wasn't accurate to say that he could heal. It should be called rebirth. A body that could be reborn was simply a heaven-defying existence. Of course, there was a limit to this rebirth, but as long as it didn't exceed this limit, it could be used continuously. And now, Shao Chun's injuries clearly didn't exceed this limit. Seeing Shao Chun's wounds begin to heal quickly, Mo Xie was stunned. But at this moment, Shao Chun's voice sounded again. I've thought of many ways to break this ghost chi filling sky. Say, if the caster is seriously injured, will this ghost chi filling sky break by itself? As he spoke, Shao Chun had already pointed his finger. The sixth finger of the nine heaven sword finger was directly used, the fish intestine sword finger. A sword light flashed and immediately pierced through Mo Xie's heart. This was a sure kill attack by Shao Chun. It pierced through Mo Xie's heart. In this way, even if Mo Xie was the first chosen, he would still die without a doubt. Spitting out a mouthful of blood, Mo Xie looked coldly at Shao Chun. At the same time, the surrounding darkness slowly receded. Just as Shao Chun thought, as long as the caster, Mo Xie, was seriously injured or dead, the ghost chi-filling sky would break by itself. Shao Chun looked at Mo Xie, whose heart had already been pierced. He did not expect that his attack would be able to pierce through Mo Xie's heart so easily. No matter how powerful Mo Xie's combat prowess was, there was no way he could survive being pierced through the heart. However, Shao Chun didn't feel the slightest bit excited about killing Mo Xie so easily. On the contrary, he had a bad feeling in his heart, but he couldn't put his finger on it. Please add it to your collection. Monthly vote. Recommended. End of chapter. That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.